Hey, welcome back everyone to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 164. I'm here with my co-facilitator, Lionel.
Hello, hello. How's everyone doing today? How you doing today, Mike?
I'm good, brother. Yourself?
I am well.
All right. Please hit the like button as you come in. There's a docket in the description beneath the video. Share the video if possible, and we will get started. Okay, so first article on the docket is from FoxNews.com. Uh, Representative Ilhan Omar faces hundreds of protests outside of a CARE fundraiser in California. U.S. Rep. Ilhan Omar faces hundreds of protesters Saturday outside a Southern California fundraising event for the local chapter of a major advocacy group representing Muslim Americans. Burn the Quran. Ilhan Omar, go to hell. And shame on you, terrorists, were among some of the messages shouted outside a Woodland Hills hotel where the Minnesota Democrat spoke at a fundraiser for the Council of American Islamic Relations of Greater Los Angeles, according to a report. The town is about 25 miles northwest of downtown LA. The protesters lined a sidewalk where they waved Israeli flags and denounced the freshman congresswoman over recent remarks that some have described as anti Semitic. The Los Angeles Daily News reported. The atmosphere was a mix of dancing and music with vitriolic comments against Omar, the report said. Omar, a 37-year-old immigrant from Somalia who came to the U.S. with her family in 1995, has faced a storm of criticism from a pro-Israel uh, pro-Israel politicians and groups of her February tweet that said, "It's all about the Benjamins, baby," in reference to the support of the U.S. lawmakers have offered to Israel. The freshman Democrats The freshman Democrat drew scorn from Republicans and some of her own party. She later apologized and clarified her criticism of the Israeli government. Anti Semitism is real, and I'm grateful for Jewish allies and colleagues who are educating me on the painful history of anti Semitic tropes, she wrote on Twitter. Being oppressed to Being opposed to Netanyahu and the occupation is not the same as anti-Semitic. She continued. I am grateful to the many Jewish allies who have spoken out and said the same. Um, what's your take on this, Lionel?
Yeah, this one left really quick because I remember at the State of the Union, she was in the audience and they were saying, "Yeah, we got the women here," and she was one of them, and they were celebrating. It was all kumbaya. Then a few weeks out, what, a month and a half out, is this one left real quick, and
Mm.
with her comments, it's strange because you have so many people in this country that are already quote unquote anti-Semitic. Then you have people that are pro-Israel. It's it's a mix of things that really don't make sense. It's really not adding up to me. It don't make too much sense. But she's getting the short end of the stick. I've heard stories where not stories, but I read headlines where it was saying people in our own party are trying to get are turning against her, meaning the women. Uh, which goes to show how deep they loyalty are. But that's politics also, so we should expect that. But this this one left real quick.
Mhm. Yeah, I think the problem is that they're moving the goalposts when it comes to what's anti-Semitic and what's not. And before, anti-Semitic would mean that you were against the Semites of the land of Palestine. Now it's about just not liking Jewish people, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Um, because well, that's a whole other thing. Palestinians were the real Semites, and that's a whole nother thing. But you have people who came out of Europe and now claiming to be Semitic when Semitic has more to do with um, the place of origin. And a lot of these people who are claiming anti-Semitism are not even Semites. So it just cracks me up because now they've moved the goalposts from being they've moved the goalposts from being anti-Jewish to now it's you can't say anything about Israel. That's unacceptable because now how are they the only people that can't be talked about or be criticized for that matter? And Netanyahu is not even from Israel. He's born in New York City.
Wow.
So when you say things like that, and you keep moving the goalposts, people are going to come to a point where they say, "Well, you know what? I don't agree with any of this stuff. This whole thing is bogus. If you tell me I can't critique you because you're of a certain people and you deserve certain protections, that doesn't make any sense to me at all. Because as American, I have the right to free speech. I have the First Amendment. If you're telling me that the First Amendment doesn't apply to me because of who you are, that's unacceptable. There is no constitution. You're throwing the constitution out for the sake of a specific group of people. That's not going to work. That's not going to fly very well. So
Yeah. And if you say anything about Jewish or Israeli people in America, what's that law firm? Not
I mean, ADL,
no, the yeah, is it?
Anti Defamation League.
Yeah, Anti-Defamation League. Yeah, they coming after you.
Yeah, there was people in our community who actually used the Anti Defamation League against black men to keep them silent on YouTube. But that's a whole other subject.
But she, like I said, she's taking a short end of the stick. She's really feeling her blackness right now. But it means to be black in
Hmm.
America, not Somalian, not Arab. No, you, when they look at you, they and I'm sure they're letting her know who
Hmm.
she is in America. And I don't want to say it's funny, as in like ha ha funny, but it's funny in terms and ironic that you have these people that come over that are black or slash African, and you know, I, yeah, they may not identify with us. People that come from Africa that don't identify with us, but when they've been here for so long and they are so, shown the same things that we talk about, and they're exposed to that, then it's like a reality check.
Hmm. Well, she always identified herself as being a black woman, right? She says three things. I'm African, uh, African black. I am Muslim, and I'm a woman too. So she identifies with all of the deficits of being a minority, right? So she's identifying with all this stuff, and she's putting it on the table and saying, hey, you guys actually bombed my country, meaning the United States. So she has a lot of guts, and she in my personal opinion, she represents the benchmark of um what a black woman's supposed to be, a conscious black woman.
Hmm.
She represents the benchmark, and from her unapologetically Islam approach, where she wears her garb, she wears her hijab, and things like that, and her political position on the solidarity of being a black African in a country where that country actually bombed my country, right? Her country, her speaking. She is the benchmark of what a black woman is supposed to be.
And I agree with that. I don't dislike her. She haven't said anything that was questionable toward me and toward my people,
Hmm.
my kind. So I don't dislike her,
Hmm.
but she's getting the short end of the stick right now, and from that, she's gonna really see who her friends are,
Oh
who's
yeah.
who's riding with her.
Oh yeah, absolutely. What all these women talking about? Oh, feminism and women's rights and all this other stuff.
Hmm.
All these advocates, right? Where are they at now?
Right, because right now she getting all type of tire marks all on her back.
Mhm.
They throwing her under the bus, something serious. What's going on, D? How you doing?
Hey, what's going on, DE?
Yeah, good evening. I'm okay. How are you guys?
All right, you have any input you want to add to this?
Well, I don't want to stir up anything because I'm very uh let me keep a calm head because this is a very touchy subject and I don't want to get you guys kicked off YouTube. But this the woman is completely right. I mean, they don't have an argument. So what they're trying to do is attack her personally. They don't have an argument about what she says. They can't say, well, we are not and we are not, doing this. So they attack her personally. And when they attack her personally and call her anti-Semitic, like this one rabbi who got thousands of dollars to take out a ad, it's I can't it boggles my mind because what I'm seeing is a lot of people really not paying attention to what's going on. This woman is actually Semitic. The people who are saying that she's anti-Semitic are not. If you look at history, you will see that she came from a Semitic people. Somalis are, I'm not going to get into that history, but that's the problem. And in America, as long as the people who can control the media can try to manipulate her. And like you guys are saying, nobody, the people who really should be standing on her side are silent. I'm serious. It's like the black bourgeoisie in America are all silent, you know, and
The CBC, the Congressional Black Caucus, actually backed her up.
but see, it's like the Congress of Black Caucus are not individual blacks. I don't hate Jesse. Let's take for instance Jesse Jackson.
Okay.
Says a word, says not a word. People are on Trump's who said they like Trump are not saying a word. You know, Democrats are going after her. You know, so why are they allowing this to happen?
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah, I still think that she is the. I think she's in the right. She has every right to say what she wants to say. The whole purpose of the First Amendment is to protect her freedom of speech, especially against those that she's criticized that are not even American. If you're telling me that Israeli rights extend into the United States Constitution, I have a problem with that. Then you don't have a constitution anymore. Your constitution is finished.
uh, uh,
Let me go on to the next article. All right, next one is from foreignpolicy.com. China's scare tactics prompt U.S. fears of a clash over Taiwan. American military officials in the Pacific worry that U.S. and Chinese interests could collide in the island democracy. Joint base Pearl Harbor, Hickam, Hawaii, U.S. military forces in the Pacific are alarmed by what they see as an increasingly capable China using military intimidation and economic coercion to bully its smaller neighbors. So far, these tactics fall short of actual armed conflict, but U.S. defense officials here in Washington, most of whom spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss a sensitive topic, say if the United States does not stay on alert in the region, Beijing could use force to advance its interests. And Taiwan, in particular, is a major potential flashpoint. Among the signs of Beijing's increasing aggression, a Chinese warship came within 45 yards of the bow of a Navy destroyer in the South China Sea late last year. A close encounter the service characterized as unsafe and unprofessional. Meanwhile, the U.S. Navy has increased the frequency of movement through the strategically important Taiwan Strait, including most recently on March 24th, after China repeatedly sent military aircraft and ships to circle the island for drills. And in January, China's President Xi Jinping warned that any efforts by the contested island democracy to assert its full independence could be met by armed force, and he implicitly threatened the United States if it were to intervene. In what appears to be a signal to China, the Trump administration has reportedly given tacit approval to Taiwan requests for 60 new F-16 fighter jets, prompting fresh protests from Beijing. Previous administrations, including former President George W. Bush and Barack Obama, rejected Taiwan's request to buy new F-16s, likely so as not to provoke China. But at this time, while the former process has not been completed, officials and experts said it will likely go through giving Donald Trump's administration more hawkish attitude towards China. John Bolton, Trump's national security advisor, is a proponent of the New Deal, said one former defense official. There is consensus that's almost bipartisan in Washington that it's time to be a bit more assertive against China, said Richard Abulfia, an analyst with the Teal Group. This is the part where fighters are geopolitics with wings. What do you think about this, Lino? That the United States could actually go to war with China over Taiwan.
Is it worth it? That's the first thing, because war is always war. The thought of fighting, causing harm to yourself, not specifically to the other person, but to yourself, and losing soldiers, sailors, jarheads, and the like, airmen, over whatever. Is that worth it? And in this case, we're speaking about Taiwan. Is going to war over an island that's X amount of, like, a very short distance off the shore of mainland China, where you will be out of prime position to protect it, even if you won. So that means you will be in constant conflict over the next number of years. Is it worth it? And in my opinion, I don't see how it's worth it to go to war over Taiwan. Only The only reason, only how I see it's worth it, is the oil and gas resources that are in the South China Sea. There's metric tons of oil and gas resources, and Taiwan can pose a geographical strategic placement for America to extract those resources. That's the only way I can see it, because Taiwan, the land is not worth it. It's an island. You got Hawaii. It's not worth it. But the
Guam,
resources, well, Guam is closer. Yeah, Guam is closer to um
Okinawa.
Taiwan. Right. You Only way I can see is worth it is if you have an opportunity to extract those resources. But you have China there that want to extract those resources too. So you, that in either situation, you're going to be in a protracted war.
Hmm.
I don't know if DE has something to say that will that's different or the same. I don't know, but that's what I think.
Yeah, DE, you're an Air Force guy, so the 60 F-16 fighter jets to Taiwan. What's your take on that? Hey, what's going on, BGS and more?
Well, the for Taiwan to get that many aircraft of that type is really that would be a big step for the U.S.
Hmm.
Um, it's going to get China upset if one of those airplanes land in Taiwan. I can tell you that China is going to be very upset. It won't start a war, but China's already in a war with the U.S. and the EU over Taiwan. You may not see it. It's not nobody's getting shot yet, but the war has already started, and you can see it from all the islands that China is building up in the what they call the South China Sea, which what used to be called the Philippines before. But they're entrenching themselves into the area. They're saying this is ours and we are not moving. That's why they're building up those islands. So the war is already going on, and a lot of people, as you can see, like Duterte came out and says, "Hey, you want us to fight a war? Guess who's going to get killed when we fight a war for you?" So he already backed out, you know. And China is starting to build up a lot of infrastructure in the Philippines because of that. He made a deal with the Chinese for that. But these 16 aircraft are going to get China. It can't get China more upset, but it's going to make them squeeze Taiwan even further. China doesn't really want to go to war over Taiwan because then the rest of the world is going to see China as the big bully.
And they may not win.
Can you repeat that?
No, I said they may not win either because if the United States intervenes and Japan intervenes and Australia intervenes, that can be very nasty for China. They could lose a lot of guys, and they may have the same problems that they had in 1979 going against Vietnam. I think that's one of the main concerns that they have. Whereas Taiwan is really, really dug in with all their surface-to-air missile batteries, all of their sea mines laid around the Taiwan straits, as well as a lot of their anti-ship batteries that are put in place. They have a lot of anti-ship batteries, so that they bought from Raytheon. So what I'm saying here is China may be able to take it, but they'll bleed to death before they do it. Death by 1,000 cuts.
Right. It will cost them a lot. It will cost them a lot, and like I said, to put a lot of pressure on Taiwan or even start a war with Taiwan, the world is going to be looking at China and see this bully. Whereas in the current situation now, everybody's moving over to China without China firing a shot. You see people all over the world abandoning Taiwan and moving to China's side when it comes to voting in the UN and all that.
Complex, go ahead.
Just to kind of, hey, what's going on, you guys? Peace, everyone. Yep. I think this has been a long time coming, actually. I mean, you got to go all the way back to the stalled reunification talks and the nature of that, because Taiwan basically had one of two choices. Either it's going to align itself with the West or it's going to align itself with the mainland. Okay. To speak to what you just spoke to, Mike, there's a lot of support in that region in the event that the United States did full on drop those planes there. And China has to contend more with just not only a heavily armed Taiwanese island nation, but you also have security partners in that region as well that would come in to serve as defense support. So it's actually, this is, like I said, it's been a long time coming. And, if you go all the way back to the time when Taiwan was very staunch on its independence and China was doing a lot of the saber rattling in terms of trying to threaten reunification. But over time, we've started to see a lot of different maneuvering and moving pieces taking place. And so now you have the scenario which you have today. China has bolstered itself more as a global power, but yet it's still being met. It's still being met with defiance from the predecessing superpower, right, and all of its partners. So I mean, yeah, it's kind of, I don't want to say this was inevitable, but just going back to the stalled unification talks, you can kind of only see one scenario playing out.
BJS Inmore, what's going on, brother? Weigh in on this.
Hey, I think really if you think about it, this U.S. move is basically is a bargaining chip because China's playing in their backyard. So because what they're going to do, they're going to play in China's backyard. So China, in my from 20 years of looking at this stuff, China's never really worried about Taiwan or actually trying to invade Taiwan or trying to take them over by force. They figure if they can assume the financial lead of the world and actually build out until where they have control of the global empire, then the Taiwan question is really moot. I mean, they've always had the generals that want to reunify Taiwan by force, but the government stance is pretty much let them be. As long as they're close, as long as there's really no big, huge ties to the West, then they're going to pretty much leave Taiwan alone, and they have for the most part. So I don't think this is any different.
Okay, Mike, I'm sorry.
No, well, we covered an article back in February where the United States gave Taiwan a couple of destroyers. They even had the same crackerjacks that the U.S. Navy has. So that was it was a very advanced ship too, and I think China had basically said, threatened the United States, be careful, what you're doing in our backyard. Now you're talking 60 new F-16 fighter jets, and they're talking about new space. United States actually giving them technology for space development, so they're actually pulling a lot of innovations out of NASA to actually build their own space system. So that's something that China doesn't really play too well with.
Well, Mike, one other thing I wanted to mention too is that there was a piece, and I meant to send this through the email chain. There was actually a piece that ran today on Bloomberg about the fact that China's now looking at the Huawei CFO largely being held captive, being held hostage here, and so all of this is giving an indication that this is actually being more of an escalate. He's giving the tone of an escalated tone. Is what I'm trying to say.
You have a bigger chance. You have a bigger chance of starting a war down in Venezuela because of Venezuela than you do over Taiwan, because Russia and China being in Taiwan goes directly against the Monroe Doctrine, and that's not going to sit well with the U.S. generals at all. I mean,
Russia and China and Venezuela, not Taiwan.
Yeah, in Venezuela, that's not going to sit with the generals at all. I mean, it's not sitting well. I'm sure Trump is getting an earful because that's that's damn near it's damn near 200-year-old doctrine.
Well,
that's been enforced.
Well, China has been doing military drills with Dominican Republic, Trinidad and Tobago. They just gave Trinidad and Tobago a new warship with advanced capabilities. They've been training with Barbados. They've been training with Cuba, and they've been training with what do you call that? What's the other island there? Jamaica. They've been training with Jamaica. So they've been in America's backyard for the last 5 years, and I don't think Obama hasn't said too much. Trump hasn't gone down there. Trump hasn't personally gone down there. Rex Tillerson canceled his trip down there before he got fired. It doesn't seem like they have a clear, concise position on where they stand on what they're going to do in Latin America.
If you fought a war for freaking 7 or 8 years in Syria, because Putin drew a line in the sand, a line in the water. Now he's drawing the same line in Venezuela. That's not going to sit well with the generals. That is not going to sit well with the generals. I can tell you that.
You see,
I could tell you that, man. That goes right up. That bolsters right up against the Monroe Doctrine. And I think, go ahead, D.
Yeah, go ahead. Look, I was saying before, like the Taiwan with the thing with Taiwan, China is slowly moving into areas where they putting the squeeze in other places, like BGS said. Before 10 years ago, China wasn't in Barbados. Barbados used to vote with the U.S. every time on everything. Jamaica was the same thing. Trinidad was kind of up iffy. Guyana was kind of iffy because Guyana was always going their way a little bit from the time what's the name was in power.
But didn't China put a substantial investment in Guyana, the canal down there.
Oh yeah, China owns quite a bit of Guyana.
There was
invested much in Guyana because Guyana is right next to Venezuela.
I think it was Nicaragua. There was Nicaragua, wasn't it? They were putting for a new canal, wasn't it?
No, they did both. They did both.
I remember specifically as Guyana, and then there was something that came across the newswire today about political upheaval in Guyana. So I mean, you're starting to see this spread all across South America, like you said, starting with Venezuela, right? So you're starting to see the stabilization all down. I mean, I agree. I think you're probably more likely to see hostilities probably in the South American region more so than Taiwan.
Well, basically, Putin declaring that they're getting ready to dig in. That is
because they bought those 2 islands. Venezuela transferred those 2 islands to Russia, and those islands.
This is not good.
Yeah, those islands are strategically placed, and where they are, you can't have big, large aircraft carriers or destroyers going into them. So they're pretty protected by the reefs that are around it. But they also have the capability to fire off those new hypersonic missiles.
Yes, I'm talking about this. This is far more volatile. So in this is the way I'm looking at it. If I'm sitting in the seat and before I go to war, before I'm thinking about going to war, I'm actually going to use something as a bargaining chip. What is precious to China? Venezuela is precious to us. What can we threaten to take from China to actually get them to actually come to the table?
But see, look, one of the things that was happening while the U.S. was fighting in Iraq and Syria is that the Chinese and the Russians were moving into this backyard. They were letting the U.S. and by the time Obama decided, you know what, we're going to do a pivot, the Chinese are started already building out their infrastructure here. I mean, in the Caribbean.
Because where was all your money going? You can't fight. You can't. The military does not fight without money. If you have all your eggs in one basket, guess what? You don't have.
You don't have money to defend yourself when something else comes up.
But now, guess what? Guess what they're doing now? They're pulling all that stuff.
There's a lot of noise coming from you. Can you mute yourself? Yeah. So you hadn't seen, like DE was mentioning before, you hadn't seen Barbados and most of the Caribbean countries siding with Russia and China. This is recent because even Barbados had formed a closed door meeting without the United States a few weeks ago, and basically said we sided with Venezuela on this. This is unheard of.
Yeah, well, yeah, but they, I think the United States overplayed its hand. But hell, we knew this was going to happen because we talked about this a year and a half ago when Venezuela tried to get from underneath the sanctions. That this could happen. The United States wasn't going to sit well with it because Venezuela is sitting on, even though it's almost like tar. The grade of oil is a very, very heavy grade of oil, and it takes a special refinery actually refine it. But the thing is, it's like they said, it's like it rivals Saudi Arabia. In fact, the reserves are actually bigger than Saudi Arabia. The United States is not going to let that go easily.
Saudi Arabia's tapped out. Saudi Arabia's oil is tapped out. They're already hitting rock bottom at this point.
Years ago, back in 2004, I do believe, or maybe might have been 2005, Chavez was saying that he wanted he wanted to be listed as the having the biggest oil reserves in the world because it's because of the heavy crude that they have. It's pretty much untapped, and at the time it was like 2 or 3 times the size of what Saudi Arabia had. And that's, like I said, oil, Monroe Doctrine, strategic placement, all that kind of stuff. The United States is not going to let that go down easily, in my opinion. They may. There's going to be a bargain somewhere. So if they have to lean on Taiwan to get the Russians and the Chinese out, or at least come to some kind of agreement, that's what I'm seeing. The generals are not going to let this go down easily. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the only thing with that is that the only refinery that has the capability here in the United States to process that crude is actually owned by the Koch brothers. So if that's why there is an interest to not let that go.
Well, not necessarily, not just that, but you also have India that buys a lot of crude oil from Venezuela as well, and they have processing facilities that do it really quick.
You can always do what? You can always build more processing refineries. You cannot build oil.
Right. Right. Let me jump to this next article.
Okay.
All right, this one is from Stratfor. Italy, China, Rome joins Belt and Road Initiative.
Mm-hmm.
Italy became the first group of seven countries to join China's Belt and Road Initiative on March 23rd, Reuters reported. Deputy Prime Minister Luigi Di Maio signed the Belt and Road Memorandum of Understanding during a ceremony that served as a highlight of Chinese President Xi Jinping's 3-day trip to Italy.
Mm-hmm.
Additional deals, including ones covering energy, finance, and agricultural produce, were also signed. So this guy, the prime minister, deputy prime minister, is the same guy that says that France should actually pay reparations back to Africa last month.
Yeah.
These guys are breaking left. They're actually, this guy wants to sign a deal with Poland, a pact deal with Poland.
Mm-hmm.
To kind of break away from the EU.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's a clean break. That's a clean break.
Yeah.
So this guy's talking about a Plexit, Poland and Italy exit within the next couple of years, and this is very threatening to France, because now France is saying, Macron is saying, hey, what are you guys doing? You're kind of shooting above your weight, but in reality, they're not all that far off, because they're not really dependent upon the EU all that much. They owe a lot of money to the EU because of the EU, and it's not really beneficial to them. So signing this deal is a blow to the EU itself.
Yeah, well, they don't want a yellow vest in their country like France is going through.
Mm-hmm.
Italy went into the EU thinking that they were going to get a lot of benefits from it, but instead they ended up with a lot of debt and not the benefits that they expected.
And a lot of illegal immigration coming through their country allowed by the EU.
Yes,
exactly. And the EU's not helping.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, we got 40 people watching this. Please hit the like button, please.
Folks, hit the like button. I dropped a notice on my community page, so you're probably gonna get some more people.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons why this current government Italy got elected.
Hit the like button, folks. I know you guys just coming over, but on your way in, hit the like button.
What were you saying, DE?
Yeah, I was saying that this is one of the reasons why this current government in Italy got elected, because of this problem with the EU, and a lot of people in Italy were complaining, "Hey, why are we not getting the benefits that other people are getting in the EU?"
Yeah, that problem. Plus, their banks are very, very close to collapse.
So
their Italian banks are basically hanging on by a thread.
Right. Remember back in January, Italy hosted the Libyan Forum on a peace agreement on try to get the warring factions to stop warring with each other and to actually form a democratic process, because Italy was benefiting from the oil that Gaddafi had, and once the French came in and took out the French and the British came in and took out those those pieces of infrastructure, Italy suffered greatly. So they want some kind of agreement, but the only problem is they can't get everybody to the table. Turkey did not want to come to the table. The French didn't want to come to the table, and the British didn't want to come to the table. So all they had was the Libyan warring factions in Italy, and Italy trying to broker deals, and it didn't work out too well. So now Italy's seeing that EU is the big hurdle here.
Yeah, well, basically, it's scorched earth. They want Libya to remain a basket case until they can get things, well, at least slow things down.
Well, I think with Italy too, there was a number of deals that came in addition to them signing on to the BRI. So I mean, just looking at it, essentially the deal is worth up to about 20 billion euros. So I mean, that's a, if Italy is to look at its options, right? Okay, do we try to figure out what we do here with the EU, or do we strike out on our own? I mean, the nature of the deal that they've got with China, that basically sets them up to be okay at some point in the future, as opposed to trying to, I don't know, save a sinking EU ship.
Yeah, well, you see, basically, the UK set the tone that there's holes in the boat, and basically the holes in the boat are coming from where? From France. If France can't get its Africa problem straight, then France is going to have. Well, France is already having issues because they're probably not getting the money that they used to get.
You don't see that the U.S. is actually trying to take over France's possessions in Africa.
No,
I don't know if it looks like that to you,
no. You already got the Chinese and the Russians in your own backyard. Why are you trying to go over to Africa? With what money?
Who, you mean the U.S.?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the U.S. is inside Francophone states, and they I think they're more or less trying to protect whatever assets are there, because they do own a lot of property over there in terms of Africa and those Francophone areas. The problem is that China is offering better deals on the ground, and some of these Francophone leaders are saying, I don't know if I really want to keep doing business with the French. I'm not really getting much out of this other than a warm seat. So why not do business with the Chinese and break south with them?
Well, the Francophone countries are staying put is because of what happened to Libya. Libya was a demonstration. That's why they're staying put. That's why they did stay put for so long, because they were ready to bail. Just like the Ivory Coast had already bailed. So that's how come the Ivory Coast and Libya got hit at the same time. They were ready to bail.
Lino, do you have anything you want to add to this?
No, not at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
But basically, with Italy getting ready to bail, they're signing on the Belt and Road. That means, how long do you think the EU has?
About 10 years, 10 to 12 years.
Yeah, you think that long?
Yeah, they have about 10 to 12 years.
I think about 5, personally. We're gonna
it depends on how Brexit fallout works. With this whole Brexit thing, what France and what Germany wants to do is to stick it to the British and make them feel the pain as they leave, and as a reminder to everybody else in the EU, if you try to leave, you'll get the same you get the same work too. You get those same hands too. 80 billion euros to just to leave as an exit. That's not something that they're not going to pay that. Even if they could pay it, they're not going to pay it.
Oh, they're not going to pay it. They're not going to pay it. And basically, I don't think what I think is that the UK didn't think that the EU would hold up this long. That's how come they're stalling.
Yeah, there's no real scalability with the EU. I mean, what, you bring in Montenegro and now you want to bring in the Ukraine? I mean, what does that really offer you? I mean, the EU is a sinking ship for the most part, and the only thing holding it together is France and Germany. And at this point,
and France is not looking too good.
Yeah, France isn't looking too good. Macron is a former banker from the Rothschild Bank. So he has their best interest. Germany can only sustain so long. At this point, they don't feel, if you're telling them that they have to spend 2% of their GDP on NATO, they say, well, what's the point of me spending my 2% when you guys have been paying for all this time? So
yeah, well, Turkey didn't join the EU, but they're already gone. If Italy goes, and then Poland goes, and then if Italy and Poland goes, guess who also is going to go? It's probably going to be Greece.
Oh yeah, Greece, Portugal, Spain.
Well, if they go, then what's left of the EU?
Well, they'll bring
Germany
and a collection of partners,
and there's an old article, if I could find it, called the Euro, which is the Northern European Euro, with Germany and a collection of Eastern and Northern European states. We're actually going to go east toward Russia. form their own block, their own independent block, and let the pigs go.
Right. All right. Let me jump to this next article.
Let me see if I can find it. Go ahead and jump to the next article. See if I can find it. I do believe it's in my Evernote. It's an old art. It goes back to like 2006 or 7, I think it was. Maybe 2009.
All right. This next one is from militarytimes.com. Africa, a continent where partnership is in demand. We've been talking about this for quite some time. The strength of the United The strength of the United States is reflected by its values, diversity, and what we can offer the world is as a collective whole. While the nation's military might be unrivaled, a robust whole of government approach enables security, stability, and prosperity. What the U.S. has proven it can deliver makes it a partner of choice for many. The point became abundantly clear when I accompanied Ambassador Alexandra Lascaris, deputy of the commander for civil military engagement at U.S. Africa Command, AFRICOM, to Nigeria, Benin, and Cote d'Ivoire this week. Ambassador Lascaris conducted engagements with U.S. embassies, foreign, and U.S. ambassadors, top African military leadership, and the president of Cote d'Ivoire, Alassane Dramane Ouattara. The experience enhanced by my direct understanding of what Africa's values and their areas of concern. Border security and potential for migration of threats were unanimous common concerns shared by each African nation. In Africa, poverty, source of criminal activity, the presence of violent extremist organizations, and rapid population expansion are realities. The value of professional U.S. military training, quality equipment, and education were unanimously expressed by our African partners. No shit. If African countries are to become exporters of security beyond their borders and not importers, U.S. government educational programs and partnership building capacity are key. Access to education and basic services are not birthrights assured as they are in wealthier countries. Where education exists in Africa, 100 children can be packed in the classroom. There is a strong demand for signal for improved education, especially in English language training. We had the opportunity to engage with African officers who attended the U.S.'s Defense of Language Institute at Lackland Air Force Base, Texas. Among many impressive African officers, we met a remarkable female African military officer who is a doctor and speaks 5 different languages. The African officers spoke glowingly about the value of the DLI experience and desire to export it to others. Cote d'Ivoire adopted the DLI curriculum and is educating other Africans. The program clearly met an African identified need and forged powerful connections. African partnership takes many forms, whether it involves capacity building or some other means of support. For instance, the recent increase in Africa-U.S. command airstrikes in Somalia has received considerable attention of late. It's important to review the purpose of these actions. The U.S. supports the federal government of Somalia's efforts to restore democratic rule by degrading the Al-Shabaab terrorist organization. Airstrikes against Al-Shabaab enabled enhanced security conditions, created expanded opportunity for government and economic development to take hold. Additionally, striking Al-Shabaab militants disrupts external attack planning and reduces the regional and transitional threat posed by the organization to the African continent and beyond. These airstrikes are carried out with the utmost precision and care. The airstrikes occur primarily in secluded, low-populated areas using technology that affords pinpoint accuracy. Basically, sounds like a PR for U.S. military. But
I was going to say, man, why is it always like when U.S. needs to have some sort of partnership involvement, it has to revolve around defense and military? It never has to deal with infrastructure development or anything like that.
That's what separates them from China.
Yeah.
You exactly. Yeah, you guys go ahead and jump in on this.
Yeah, it's always forced. Well, when have they ever really sold development?
Yeah,
Unless it's
and
profitable for them.
I also noticed that one of the areas of focus was on the migration of concerns.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the United States United States military would be the perfect partner to address those when they're typically usually behind those migration of concerns, if you will. You know,
Yeah.
problems spilling over from one border into the other conveniently.
Yeah, yeah. I found I found an article. It's from I forget what the website was, but from 2010. It's talking about the European sovereign debt crisis. It has become apparent since mid 2010 that Europe, both within the Eurozone and externally, was suffering a massive overhang of unpayable debt. The credit agency reevaluated their assessments of European economies and devalued the bond rating of several European states, particularly Spain, Greece, Ireland, Portugal, the pigs, basically. Romania, Hungary, and the periphery. Let me see. Skipping down, the Germans, with the strongest economy in Europe and the source of much of the bailout funds, has developed a Plan B, the Northern Euro, or otherwise known as the Euro, I should say. That is, in the event of a Euro crisis, Germany is suggesting that it may join with Scandinavian states, Austria, Holland, to establish the Euro. Even the Czechs have applied to join. The most interesting aspect of this plan is that France will not be invited to join. It will have to stay with the Southern and Eastern Europeans in the diminished Eurozone. The plan has not been completed, but it has serious support in Germany and outside of the cadre of political Euro politicians there.
Mm-hmm.
This is coming from 2010.
Yeah, that makes sense. China bought a lot of logistics ports inside Greece.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, and they also bought the hovercraft, the landing craft from Greece as well. They paid a very cheap price for it. I mean, obviously, Greece politicians probably got a nice cut out of it, but that landing craft, they actually went back and remanufactured it and turned it into a formidable landing piece for a beach invasion. So they have every intention on taking over the smaller parts of Europe that's actually usable for their own purposes.
Mm-hmm.
We saw that they sent their Belt and Road Initiative train from China all the way up to UK.
Mm-hmm. This is almost like what Lincoln did in right after the Civil War, mm-hmm. with the two train lines, basically connecting your empire.
Yeah, and then tying this all in with Africa is that
mm-hmm.
United States isn't foolish. They know that Africa is going to pop in the next 5 or 10 years. It's going to have massive growth.
Yeah, I heard I actually have to put it up. A demographer actually said that Africa may hit 4 billion by 2060. 4 billion people.
4 billion people. Yeah, they're projecting 2 billion by end of 2035. So.
Yeah, well, but they were saying they were saying 4 billion at 2100, man. But 2050, 2060 is like 40, 50 years earlier. That is a lot faster than they projected.
Go ahead,
a lot faster.
4 billion.
Yeah.
By 20. When you say Africa, do you mean sub-Saharan or total Africa?
Well, the continent, the whole continent.
Total.
Well, where are most of the people at anyway?
Sub-Saharan. So 4 billion.
Yeah.
Yeah, Linnell, it's possible because
I'm not saying it's not possible, but I don't think people understand that number so quick in that short amount of time.
Because they're projecting
that number.
They're projecting they're using the fertility rate as a projection.
And remember when Macron went to African states, said, well, the reason these women are having so many children is because they're uneducated.
Yeah.
So that was a ploy for him to curve
the birth rate. Yeah, because because that is a problem. But they've said that is a problem.
But
it's
and
not only
Go ahead, Liddell.
by instilling these Western ideologies, such as what we're dealing with here in America with women.
They want to take away fertility rights in America and give them to who? They want to give them to Africa. They want white women to have kids, but they don't want the Africans to have them. They're trying to reverse it, or at least slow it down. They can't reverse it, but they slow it down. In fact, I'll actually post it because I got the clip. I'll actually post it later on tonight. It was actually on the Coast to Coast show. You've heard the demographer before, and it kind of surprised me who was talking about it, about Africa having 4 billion by 20. He said 2050. I said I had never heard that projection. I said
now that's crazy because I'm gonna say most of us that's on the panel right now will still be alive.
Yeah, yeah. Well, maybe
see,
all of us.
the situation is that with Africans, when you get development, when development comes to Africa, one of the things that infrastructure does is that it cleans up your water. It cleans up, the sewer system is not running in the street anymore. Your food becomes more. You get better food. That quality of life goes up. So children die.
Yeah, that's the thing because before, even though you had a high fertility or high birth rate, the thing is you had a high infant mortality and a high death rate amongst old folks. But when you get in sanitation and infrastructure, guess what happens? The infant mortality rate goes down, which is dropping already, and then your life expectancy goes up. So guess what happens? You're going to have the what you call a massive B cycle, such that the world has never seen before. I mean, a massive B cycle. You're basically adding like 3 billion people in less than 50 years. The world's never seen that before.
Yeah, a lot of Africans are coming back from Europe as well. I think we covered a few articles that discuss that. And plus, they're technologically developed. We talked about this before many times on this channel, that Africa is at least 10 years ahead of African Americans in terms of human development. They're turning out artificial intelligence, working on blockchain. They're working on a whole lot of emerging technologies that Black people in America just aren't touching at all. And unfortunately, if Black people don't figure this out, man, in America they're going to get left behind because at some point Africa's going to close the doors on any sort of migration and people looking for visas. They won't need your human capital at that point.
Well, the thing is you can have all these children born, but you don't have the infrastructure actually trained and put all these people to work. That is a heavy lifting, and that takes getting them up to snuff. Unless you have expend a lot of money, because it's very expensive to actually train people without the infrastructure that you train them, and it's not there yet. So even though you're going to have 4 billion people there, you can't educate them all. It's impossible with the money that you have. They're born too fast. Not enough infrastructure, not enough educated people. You're actually going to need more educated people. So there's going to be opportunities.
Yeah, there's a documentary. Nicholas Fuller in the chat is talking about the push for white women to have more babies with Black men. There's actually a documentary on YouTube. You can look it up, and it's about European women traveling to Africa for Black DNA.
Yeah, they've been doing that. They've been doing that for the last 20 years on both coasts, because you have a fertility problem, especially in Northern Europe with the men. The men, they say half the men are infertile,
and they're also impotent too.
Huh? Impotent?
Yeah.
Oh well, yeah, probably so. So that's another issue.
What are you saying right now?
I was gonna say, really?
Yeah.
That's a new bio life sciences agenda.
Yeah, they've been
doing
Black
DNA from Black men and
there's flights coming from 2 or 3 flights coming from the UK to the Gambia every day, because so many white women are going down there getting pregnant. And
they showed a white woman at 52 years old having twins or something like that by some Black man.
By some Black man, yeah.
getting pumped up.
Yeah.
Whatchamacallit talked about that the other day.
Dynas, yeah.
And the woman from Kenya.
Yeah, but that's been going on for a while,
Yeah.
man. We would because the guy from here, he's guy from UK. He's actually living in Ghana. We were talking about that in like 2010. He was telling us about the white women coming down from the UK, getting pregnant, and then flying back up, having a baby, and then once a year they bring the babies back down to meet their fathers. So this has been going on for quite a while. In fact, they have a video about sex tourism with the Germans and the English going to Kenya.
Yep.
So it's been around. They've been doing this for years, man. It's not new.
Yeah, Madagascar. All right, let me just knock this one out. This one is from NBCNews.com. Russia spoofing GPS on vast scale to stop drones from approaching Putin. Report says. Got to mute you, DE. There's a lot of noise coming from you. Russia manipulates global navigation systems by sending out false location data to civilian ships or other users on a vast scale in an apparent attempt to prevent drones from approaching President Vladimir Putin or to safeguard sensitive sites at home and abroad, according to a report released Tuesday. Although Russia's mimicking or spoofing of GPS signals has been exposed previously, new research by the US-based nonprofit C4ADS shows that Moscow's trickery is more pervasive and indiscriminate than previously reported. Since February 2016, Russia engaged in 9,883 cases of suspected spoofing of satellite navigation systems, including in the country's far northeast, the Crimea Peninsula, and in Syria. The report said the deception affected 1,311 civilian vessels' navigation systems, including those belonging to civilian Russian ships. We demonstrate that these activities are much larger in scope, more diverse in geography, and longer in duration than any public reporting suggests to date, said C4ADS, which was based on publicly available data. The spoofing poses a potential danger to aviation and maritime safety and underscores Russia's growing prowess in electronic warfare, the report said. The findings also raise the possibility that terrorists, criminals, or insurgents could inflict grave harm by using similar methods, according to the report. In the Black Sea, civilian ships over the past 3 years reported receiving false location data on their navigation systems. That sometimes placed their vessels inland at an airport. Much of the spoofing appeared to be designed to prevent drones from entering restricted airspace, but civilian ships sailing nearby often get caught in the spillover from deception measures, the report said. So this is something I've tracked before, but Russia uses something called GLONASS. It's their equivalent to GPS. It works great in Africa, and that's what they gave Africa as a gift, because it works better from north to south, which is what the continent is based on. And in America, we use GPS because it works better from east to west. So longitude versus latitude. They know, the Russians know that these drones are flying over their airspace in the Black Sea. And they want to bring down as many of those drones and knock out as many of those satellites as soon as possible. The Iranians figured this out, I think back in 2009 or something like that, when they jammed they jammed up quite a few CIA satellites and brought down one of their satellites. But
what was it? Was it Stuxnet? They reverse engineered Stuxnet.
Yeah, they got a hold of it, and it got leaked out to the black market.
Well, basically, they use Stuxnet to actually infect the nuclear reactors, the nuclear whatever spinners in Iran.
Yes.
And they basically had to revert it, so they gave it to Russia. Russia's reverse engineered it for them, and basically then they started infecting American drones with it. So I think they had to ground the drones for like 3 months to clean it out.
Well, that was different. They hijacked that drone, but they used that same Stuxnet warfare against German nuclear systems, and actually they brought down Fukushima with that as well.
But the thing is, whatever was in there, they reversed engineered it, re-engineered it, and that's when they started bringing down the those drones. So
yeah, they with the drones are a little bit different. They intercepted the signal from the satellites, which is really easy to do. As long as you know what frequency it's on, you can actually intercept it. So that's how they were able to bring down those. DE, you have anything you want to add to this?
No, you guys doing a pretty good job.
Remember when they grounded all those drones because they were infected?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
But they had to expect that when they attack Iran nuclear infrastructure, that Iran is not going to take it lying down and they're going to come back. Iran is not like Syria or Iraq. The Iranians are very technologically suave. These guys are. I worked with some of them, and I knew it.
Yeah, they infected all those drones, and then they basically downloaded the software from the drones and basically reverse engineered all this shit. So they basically had to ground all the fucking drones for like, what is it, like a couple of months, and so they clean out the virus and then basically reprogram the drones again. So, I remember that. I remember that when they did that, it was funny. And then they started basically bringing down all the drones.
I was just about to say that Iran. Every once in a while, Iran will bring down the drone that they choose. They're doing that for technological purposes. They're trying to do it to see what the U.S. has changed.
They have they have a spectrometer that they can scan all of those frequencies, and unfortunately, if you get into someone's airspace, they can easily just hijack it and bring it down. It's not doesn't really need much. Most of the firmware, the software that's on here is the bootloader is encrypted, but all they have to do is just copy the software over to a blank hard drive, and then they're off and going.
Yeah, it was encrypted. But I'm saying is whatever was in the Stuxnet virus, that's what the encryption was actually based on. That's when they started decrypting all this crap. Because I remember distinctly once they reverse engineered the Stuxnet, they were infecting all these drones, and they were actually reverse engineering all the software on those drones, and they had to ground them all and actually clean them out and then actually reprogram all the goddamn things because they were bringing them down. So that's been going on for when was that? 2009 DE? When was that?
Yeah,
2009. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I remember that. Because we were laughing about it. I said, "Oh shit, they reverse engineered all that shit."
All right. Next one is from Reuters.com. Russian Air Force planes land in Venezuela carrying troops, reports say. 2 Russian Air Force planes landed at Venezuelan's main airport on Saturday carrying a Russian defense official and nearly 100 troops, according to media reports, amid strengthening ties between Caracas and Moscow. A flight tracking website showed that 2 planes left from a Russian military airport bound for Caracas on Friday, and another flight tracking you have a lot of noise coming from you. And another flight tracking site showed that 1 plane left Caracas on Sunday. That comes 3 months after the 2 nations held military exercises on Venezuelan soil that President Nicolas Maduro called a sign of strengthening relations, but which Washington criticized as Russian encroachment in the region. Reporter Javier Moyakra wrote on Twitter on Saturday that the first plane carried Vasily Toneskorov, chief of staff on the ground forces, adding the second was a cargo plane carrying 35 tons of material. An IL-62 passenger jet and an Antonov AN-124 military cargo plane left for Caracas on Friday from Russian military airport, stopping along the way in Syria. According to a flight tracking website, Flight Radar 24, the cargo plane left Caracas on Sunday afternoon, according to another tracking site. The flights carried officials who arrived to exchange consultations, wrote Russian government-owned news agency Sputnik. which quoted an unnamed source at the Russian embassy. Russia has various contracts that are in process of being fulfilled, contracts of a technical military character. A Reuters witness saw what appeared to be a passenger jet at an airport on Sunday. Basically, I just want to summarize this up because it's a lot of words that's unnecessary. But they have the S-300 down in Venezuela. Those S-300s are getting updated right now because they brought them out as soon as the Russians touched down in Caracas. So we know, at least from some of the articles that I've read, we know that Russia is sending engineers down to actually work on advancing these surface-to-air missile systems, for one, and number two, to protect their embassy as well.
Hmm.
Go ahead,
I think it was yesterday, BJS put out a video about the U.S. talking about cutting back. Well, it wasn't the U.S., but it was this economist talking about how was a not economist.
He was economic advisor. He was under Reagan or then Feldman, I think it was. Yeah,
right.
Feldstein. Feldman, I do believe.
This pressure on the U.S. Now they're planning on cutting back Social Security and all the other benefits that they were keeping for older people as people get old, and people they are actually they're not pushing it back anymore. They're pushing it in your face, saying, "Look, we have to keep our military strong. In order to keep our military strong, we got to cut back on these programs."
Mm-hmm.
So it's coming. I mean, Venezuela is just pushing this thing to the forefront, and the U.S. Is actually they're not going about it well. They've always gone about it this way. They talk loud and they have to back up what you say militarily. And before they were able to do that, but now with China using soft power and the Russians are doing the soft power thing too. The U.S. now has to look for other avenues, and the money is not coming from printing it anymore because China is not buying, like BJ said, China is not buying the bonds.
BJS, have anything?
Yeah, well, they've made their decision. They want to hold on to what they can hold on to, and they're, what do we have left except the military? Because what's going to happen to the United States if we can't support the dollar? What's supporting the dollar in the military? What's going to happen if we can't support the dollar? What's going to happen to the economy? It's a good question. Nobody knows. So,
go ahead, Lionel.
I'm listening. I don't think there's any more I can add to this one.
Complex, you have anything you want to add to this? I think you might be away.
I mean, all the pieces are falling in place. It's almost like you can basically count them. Okay, you look at it, say, okay, this is going to be next. This is going to be next. It's going to be next. Like I said, Russia making the U.S. look weak in Venezuela. Yep. In fact, if you go on YouTube and put in Venezuela and the Monroe Doctrine, you're going to see like maybe 20 videos talking about this.
Mm-hmm. All right, this one is from WashingtonExaminer.com. It's no secret that President Trump wants illegitimate Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro out.
Mm-hmm.
But as the Trump administration pressures Maduro's regime and continues to back opposition leader Juan Guaido, Russia has successfully positioned itself as a roadblock to Washington-backed regime change.
Mm.
And if existing shadowy ties between Moscow and Caracas weren't already a serious concern for Washington, the two Russian Air Force planes that touched down in Caracas over the weekend certainly are. Those planes carried 100 troops, a Russian defense official, and almost 40 tons of cargo. They not only provide much needed material assistance for Maduro, but they also send a clear message to Washington that the U.S. isn't the only international player interested in Venezuela. Russia would take stronger steps to back Maduro isn't entirely unexpected. Indeed, at the end of January, there were already Moscow-linked military contractors on the ground in Venezuela to support Maduro. Moreover, Russia has been a staunch backer of Maduro's regime, investing billions of dollars in military contracts and other projects that has left Moscow with a vested interest in keeping Maduro in power, both to cash in on their monetary investments and to reap the rewards of their influence. But the real motive for the Russian President Vladimir Putin seems to be what Russian and before them Soviet leaders have always relished, challenging U.S. authority in what Washington views as its own backyard. Putin is complicating U.S. plans to end Maduro's grip and restore stability in the region. Russia's investments in the government of a failed state is likely to yield few, if any long-term direct returns on investment. That makes this challenge to the U.S. the more plausible reason behind Moscow's continued support for Maduro. Likewise, the 100 Russian troops that Moscow has put on the ground, even backed by generous shipment of equipment, is hardly enough to secure an embattled regime, although it could be enough to create a headache for Washington. So this is interesting that they feel that this is the first time Russia has been there. Russia has always been there. The only difference here is that Russia traded Cuba for Venezuela and has established itself in Venezuela because it's such a more strategic point. There's more resources there as opposed to Cuba. Cuba doesn't really have a whole lot of resources, and their unwillingness to change their political doctrine actually hurts their ability to do business and actually get global support. So you can still have a communist political architecture, but you have to open up to some form of capitalism on the ground, and that's what's hurting Cuba in reference to where Venezuela is, because Vietnam is a communist political structure, just like China is, but they open up capitalism on the ground, and now Vietnam is the hottest place in Asia right now to invest into, even outside of China. So what's happening in Venezuela with all of this is that Russia sees that a failing state that they can actually leverage as a military base, as a large military base. On top of that, they have S-300, S-200, as well as what's the other missile defense system? The S-75, which is a really, really old system, but all of these systems and layered security in place, are very dependent upon Russian assistance. So that allows Russia to actually embed themselves inside Latin America without actually being moved. And
it also sends a signal to the rest of the world that even in the United States' backyard, we can protect you. So if you decide to switch sides, then we can actually ensure that the United States won't interfere.
Yeah,
So this is a line. This is a line. This is a line in the jungle, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, the United States is building a naval port on the western side of Ukraine, just below Kyiv. So Russians see that as a direct threat to them. So they figure, well, if you're going to build that, well, why not us take pieces of Venezuela and put our missiles in there too?
And well, basically, what it used to be until they started fracking. Venezuela's supply of the United States was like between 11 and 15% of national oil. Okay, before they started fracking. So, and those are huge reserves. And like I said, the United States is not going to let that go easily. So we'll see. So if they're actually going to go to blows, and I hope this is not true, this will probably be the one. So, like I said, keep a real good eye on this one.
They won't win. It's not a winnable war. It's a completely different war than Syria. It's not flat ground with desert like Syria is, where you can just bust right through the borders and make it in. Most of the the ingress and egress areas of Venezuela has been closed off by the military. So even if the U.S. wanted to get in there, they're not going to get in.
Yeah, but the thing is, you've been basically, it's your backyard and you're backed into a corner. So it's one thing if you're, halfway around the world and rather than in your own backyard. So that's if they're willing to put up a fight, outside of Mexico, this would be as close as you're going to get. This ain't Syria. This ain't Taiwan. This is something that's been sacred for 200 years, which is the Americas. And I don't think has there ever been a world war or anything close to it on the soil of in any place on the American continents, either one.
Only the last time was when the British invaded
the Falklands.
Oh yeah, the Americas. Yeah, the Falklands. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you remember it? Yeah, I'm talking about the Americas. I'm talking about since the Monroe Doctrine.
Yeah.
Oh no. Well, Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, we're talking about even Pearl Harbor. They attacked it, but they didn't invade it.
And the Falklands were in the 80s, right?
Yeah, the Falklands were in the 80s, and that was that was basically a regional skirmish between Britain and basically the Falkland Islands. And Argentinians actually kicked that off.
Well, the British actually reached out to Reagan for help, and
Reagan told him no.
Reagan told him to go take a hike.
Yeah.
They almost lost that war. They were 24 hours away from losing that war altogether.
Yeah, I think Argentina, as Argentina does, they ran out of money.
Well, the French helped them. The French actually jumped in and helped the British, but that's the only logistical part because it was Israel. Israel was actually funding that war for Argentina. They wanted to knock out the British. Friends to the end, huh? Scholar Chang, what's going on, my Chinese ambassador? Ambassador Chang, are you there?
He's muted.
Hey, quick question. Julian Maximum said he asked me, where's Russia getting the resources to engage in all this juggernaut type?
Hey guys, I'm sorry. Let's just say hi. My bad. Mike, I heard you, but I didn't realize I was muted. My bad.
What's going on, Scholar? Yeah, he was saying, where's Russia getting the resources to engage in all this juggernaut type stuff?
Talking about money?
Yeah, and I was telling him
China.
Yeah,
the biggest bank in the world.
Yeah, I was telling him that Russia builds their own military equipment.
Oh yeah.
And also they sell gas to the Western Europe. So they getting some money.
Yeah.
They have their own military budgets. So they spent $2 billion in Syria, which is why they stopped when they stopped. So they had a hard stop at the time that they did because they had a projected idea of how much they were going to spend going into this and how fast it was going to take to take out all of these jihadis. They knocked out 100,000 terrorists in just 3.5 years. So that was a pretty good run for them. 25,000 sorties, $2 billion. That was all they was willing to spend. Plus they already lost. They lost a couple of aircraft. So that's you tack that on. So they've already spent their money in Syria, and everybody else is looking at this as well. Iraq had requested Russian help as well. About a year or so ago and said, let's replace the United States with Russia because they did such a good job in Syria. Let's replace them. And then Venezuela is probably looking at this and saying, well, they did a pretty good job in Syria. Why not help us out too?
They have the master blasters have a bottomless pit. They're willing to spend whatever because this is the game of risk for control of the planet is what it is. They're willing to spend. They won't run out. They won't run out any money.
No, they have a lot of gold.
Yeah, they got gold. What I'm saying is they have the biggest financier in the world backing them, which is China. And we keep thinking of these two entities as separate, and they're not. They're both China and Russia are both there as we speak in Venezuela, right?
Chinese technicians are in Venezuela, but not Chinese military. But Russia is actually there militarily and technically.
Yeah,
China wants to sell cars, so they have a vested interest in it.
Yeah, well, yeah, partially.
Chinese brains, Russian muscle.
Chinese brain, Russian muscle, master blaster.
Exactly. The strategy. Russia is closer to Venezuela. You know, they have the capability of get in and out of Venezuela easier than China. China don't have this international marine fleet like the Russians do.
Yeah, they're still working on this. They said it won't be done until late 2020 or early 2020, first quarter of 2020, because they have to get the other aircraft carrier up and going.
Yeah, when something jumps off, then it's one thing when peacetime there's a different time scale when if something happens to jump off. Because remember, the United States went from damn near zero to what? World military power in what, 4 years or less?
You mean after World War II?
No. What is it? From Pearl Harbor to when? Till they fully engaged. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it took 4 or 5 years. Doesn't take that long if you're focused on it. Then the Chinese aren't focused on it just yet. They're trying to do two things at the same time.
All right, this one is from theguardian.com. Venezuela opposition fears crackdown after Maduro threatens arrest. Venezuela's opposition is bracing for a severe political crackdown after Nicolas Maduro lashed out at the diabolical pro-imperialist puppets he claimed were trying to remove him from his presidency and vowed to imprison them all. The struggle between Maduro and his challenger, Juan Guaido, escalated dramatically last week with the detention of Guaido's right-hand man, Roberto Morero. Morero, a 49-year-old lawyer, was accused of helping to run an anti-Maduro terror cell that was plotting a series of political assassinations and attacks designed to force Hugo Chávez's successor from power. Maduro's information minister, Jorge Rodriguez, on Saturday claimed the head of that supposed network was Guaido's political mentor, Leopoldo Lopez. There's a lot of noise coming from. Sorry. He accused the group of recruiting Central American mercenaries to carry out attacks on political and military leaders of Maduro's Bolivarian revolution. Addressing a rally in Caracas on Saturday, Maduro hinted that Guaido and other key opposition figures were also in his sights. In the coming days, we will certainly see more terrorists captured, whatever their names might be, Maduro said. There will be justice in Venezuela. We will not shy away from sending these crooks to jail one by one sooner rather than later. We have their names, we know their faces. On Sunday, the front page of one pro-Maduro tabloid, Ultimas Noticias, fueled opposition fears that Guaido could face arrest. Guaido brought in assassins to commit acts of terror, it said. Any move against Guaido could provoke a strong reaction from Washington. Donald Trump has thrown his weight behind efforts to unseat Maduro, and the White House has warned of significant pushback if Guaido is arrested or harmed. Separately, 2 Russian Air Force planes landed in Venezuela main airport on Saturday, carrying a Russian defense official and nearly 100 troops, according to a local journalist. Phil Gunson, a Caracas-based analyst for Crisis Group, said he expected Maduro's emboldened administration to move in hard on members of the opposition in the coming days. I think we will see more arrests. It seems like the hardcore around Maduro has decided to hang on at all costs. Everything we have seen in the last few days confirms the view that they are not considering a negotiated way out of this. So, what he's trying to do, Maduro is trying to do, is take down all the pillars around around Guaido and make him and strip him naked.
Mm-hmm.
And basically force him to either leave or just settle for arrest. But at this point, he can't even get out the country because these all the borders and egress areas are actually closed off by the military.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually a video. I think we might have covered it before, but there's a video of him trying to re-enter the country, and all the tunnels and stuff are closed off, and all the traffic is backed up. And he's running around the country trying to find shelter. So we know that this guy has very few areas to go, and if the United States is willing to go to war over, this millennial, I mean, he's literally a millennial.
He's 35.
Yeah, he's a millennial, and if you look at some of the pictures on Instagram, he's all mooning the camera, showing his ass, showing his culo for that matter. I can't take this guy seriously. 80% of the country under a survey said that they don't know who this guy is. They never heard of him. He went to George Washington University. He's been close with the right-wing nationalist group in Washington, D.C. I don't know. Is Washington really ready for a fist fight over a millennial? It doesn't seem like it's likely. I mean, you got Marco Rubio talking big greasy shit, down in Colombia, tweeting it out. You got Pompeo and John Bolton, basically owning up to the fact that they turned the lights off in Venezuela.
Yeah.
I mean, what more do we need from this?
Without Guaido, do they have a reason to be there? The United States.
Guaido himself doesn't even look like. Yeah, he doesn't even look like he's really built for this.
No,
because even when he was going around proclaiming victory and all of that, he looked mighty unsure about it all.
Yeah, well, if he's a little dog in the kennel, if his master doesn't come down to help him out, he's in trouble.
And the thing is, they're using him as a minority. Says, see, he's brown. He's not, he's a good guy. He's one of us. He's one of the people. And the reality is, the opposition that is backing him are the white Euro supremacists. They're the guys who are the racists of the country, and they don't like the fact that under Chavez going into Maduro's leadership, that they changed the constitution to include Africans now. So now you have all the melanated people being included inside the political process that wasn't there before, and that really pissed them off. So now all of these melanated people on the ground have access to land and resources that they did not have prior to that under the former leadership that came in before Chavez, the dictators before then. And they made a big change. So now you see black people, including Professor Gerald Horn, said on YouTube that he doesn't understand why black people are not down in Venezuela in America. So we see that there's this new movement of melanated people taking place. And even Maduro said a few months ago, he said, we can't turn our back on Africa because, we're all African too. So he's all in.
Black people aren't going down to Venezuela because it's not safe to be down there. That's simple. Because I talked to a brother, he was actually, he had a girlfriend down there. He was actually going to play ball down there. And he was telling me, this was years ago, man, it's not safe down there. And things have only gotten worse.
It's about as safe as Chicago. Let's put it like that.
Ooh, no. Oh, no. I take the south side of Chicago over Venezuela any day.
South side of Chicago in the winter, man, not in the summer.
In the summer, you don't want to. Basically, what it would say if you have an iPhone or smartphone, you have to crack your screen.
Why is that?
Because if you have an iPhone, the screen's not cracked, they'll steal it at gunpoint.
Oh, you mean down in Venezuela?
Down in Venezuela, yeah.
Okay.
You do that in Chicago too. You're jacking people on Lakeshore Drive.
Try going down to Venezuela.
No, I mean I'm just saying. I'm saying.
Try going down there, man.
I'm not saying go down there. I'm just saying, like on the south side of Chicago, you getting run for your iPhone too.
Dude, there's a reason folks ain't going down there, man. It is not safe.
Oh no. I mean, of course, like what we've been covering. I mean, no.
It hasn't been safe for like 10 years, man. It's with the economic
Chavez, yeah.
Well, since he died, but say even a little bit before that, because of the economic stress, man, it's you if you go down there, you better have a guide. I mean, really have a guide, somebody that can actually walk you around. It's like it's similar to if you want to go to Brazil and go up in the favelas. You can't go there by yourself. You don't have to have somebody with you that can vouch for you.
DE, you have anything you want to add to that?
No, everything's been said.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that from 2 or 3 people, but he told me expressly if he didn't, he wouldn't have been down there. In fact, they were going to jack him, but he had a girlfriend that was down there, and she vouched for him. So
all right,
it's not safe.
All right, this next one is from Reuters.com. Trump tells Russia to get its troops out of Venezuela. U.S. President Donald Trump on Wednesday called on Russia to pull its troops from Venezuela and said that all options were open to make that happen. The arrival of 2 Russian Air Force planes outside of Caracas on Saturday, believed to be carrying nearly 100 Russian special forces and cybersecurity personnel, has escalated the political crisis in Venezuela. Cybersecurity personnel is something that we have been talking about on here for quite some time. Russia and China have backed President Nicolas Maduro, while the United States and most other Western countries support opposition leader Juan Guaido. In January, Guaido invoked the Constitution to assume Venezuela's interim presidency, arguing that Maduro's 2018 re-election was illegitimate. Russia has to get out, Trump told reporters in the Oval Office, where he met with Guaido's wife, Fabiana Rosales. Asked how he would make Russian forces leave, Trump said, "We'll see. All options are open." Maduro, who retains control over state functions and in the country's military, has said Guaido is a puppet of the United States. Russia has bilateral relations and agreements with Venezuela and Maduro that it plans to honor.
If it starts, it's going to be a mess.
Wait, I think Mike's files may have dropped again.
You go on, Mike?
He'll be back in a second. His files has been dropping.
Okay.
But go ahead, BGS. What did you?
I was going to say, if it is basically, I'm sure the generals in the background are in his ear. He may or may not want to actually go through this, but I'm sure the generals are not going to be happy to let this stand. So he's going to have a lot of military pressure.
Hey, Mike, you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay. You dropped out there.
Yeah, I see. My files is not the best. Venezuela's economy is in tatters, with food and medicine in short supply due to years of hyperinflation. In addition, citizens are now grappling with power blackouts that experts have blamed on years of neglect of maintenance. Really? This is interesting.
It's convenient.
Yeah, it's so convenient that your power goes out when.
Oh shit! Really?
Yeah. Well,
I'll say this.
You talk about stuff that you ain't supposed to be talking about. Yeah.
I'll say this. There is going to be a mess. The cat is out the bag. It's too late. The ball has gotten rolling. Once you do a coup and start to mess with the people's infrastructure for survival, something is going to. The ball is already rolling. A few weeks ago, I said they were messing with the vital elements in terms of for people to survive in the country. And the next thing they mess with their water supply. Well, like a day later after I said that, I saw the news where Venezuela's water supply was starting to get tampered with. Now you see today where their electrical infrastructure was really hit by physical terrorist attacks. So the cat is already out of the bag. It's gonna happen. But Guaido, either he's gonna have to leave or he's gonna get killed. There's only 2 options. He's in something that he do not understand. He's in something that he's in way too deep. He's being led. There's been numerous reports and reporters come out that said he's a U.S. puppet. He's in over ways too hit. He's in too much, too far, too deep. And you're right, BGS, because If the U.S. don't come to his aid,
Mm-hmm.
he's SOL, which means
Mm-hmm.
he's gonna have to find a way,
Mm-hmm.
crook or hook, to get out that country, or he's gonna die.
Look,
You know,
when
you know what
you
they
have
did?
Maduro opening, oh,
In
go
your opinion, Linnell, how bad do you think the generals actually want this?
Well, we know that in the Western Hemisphere,
Mm-hmm.
no attack has been made on the Americas and the Western Hemisphere,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the United States soil, because of the geography situation.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have Russia and China, other superpowers, global superpowers, two, like, let's say, two of the top five
Mm-hmm.
superpowers that are in a country that has the highest oil reserves in the world. We
Mm-hmm.
already know that the Middle East is either tapped out or start very close to be tapped out, and you
Mm-hmm.
have a high oil reserve in your backyard. So
Mm-hmm.
you have two of the top five global superpowers in your country, or on your side of the world.
Mm-hmm.
America and the generals, that is a security risk.
Mhm.
So they want them out. Trump may say, well, get out, da da da. He's barking, but the barks he's barking is from the generals. So
Mm-hmm.
his bite may not be strong, but the general's bite is strong. So he has the generals backing him. It may not be a full out war. It may be a prolonged, protracted dogfight where no one wins, just like Vietnam or what's going on now, Syria, or the Desert Storm. But that is also a win, also because you drain other people's finances, especially China, because we already know, news reports been coming out that China is not as financially robust as they say to the world, and Russia get their money from China. So
Mm-hmm.
it just may be a dogfight. But Guaido, he punched his ticket. He just a pawn. He's not anything else but a pawn. He could be dealt with, and I think he need to go to some type of asylum somewhere in a European or eastern part of the Eastern Hemisphere country and stay there
Mm-hmm.
for the rest of his life, or he's gonna die, because people are gonna look at him and say, "You caused this. You
well,
caused
Maduro. I was going to say Maduro's openly with this whole electrical infrastructure attack. Maduro came out and just openly said that he's laying the responsibility of this squarely on Guaido and his quote unquote gringo puppet masters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Basically, Putin said Putin already said that they're not going to back down. So in other words, they're not going to let Venezuela fall to the United States. So
He
I don't
won't
know.
learn. He won't learn until he does his research on what happened in Georgia in 2008 when the United States promised to back the Georgian President
Oh
Saakashvili,
yeah. Uh-huh.
and when the Russians showed up, there was no phone call.
Was that the conflict over South Ossetia?
Yeah, that was over South Ossetia. A lot of
Mm.
people in the United States, a lot of black people in the United States thought that Atlanta was going to be going to war, but it was really in Georgia and the Caucasus.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, so they left Saakashvili hanging, and he had to actually beg for help. I think Condoleezza Rice had actually was one of the people who came to came to his rescue. So it may not work out too well for Guaido in this regard, because anybody can kill him. It could be some rogue guy, in some plain clothes. Take a shot at him with a Winchester rifle or something. Doesn't take
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. I think they could have whacked him already, but that will give the United States even more reason to actually start something
Right.
untoward. So right now he's pretty safe.
And right now, we already know the bulk of the reason why Russia and China is over there is because they want their money back. They they want they want their ROI. They want their money back. And
Mm-hmm.
since the other part of that reason is because Americans keep putting um, military equipment in Russia's backyard, so Russia's, like we
Mm-hmm.
just stated, is using that as a strategic checkmate, not checkmate, but a stalemate
Mm-hmm.
to put, and China also, because you got Taiwan. So they're over there. They're just using Venezuela. And if you were smart in terms of Guaido, you would say, well, man, that's a tough cookie. I don't know. I don't see why he.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't see why
strategic.
he.
It's a hell of a lot better just to move troops around and rattle some sabers than actually start shooting.
Yeah,
So
and I do my best to take up for millennials because I'm a millennial, but man, I don't see why because these are countries, these are heads of state. They're using you for their own benefit. You only have permanent interests and limited friends, and they're using you. And the quagmire you stepped your right foot in is so deep that you can't even get out. I don't see, man.
It's a roll of the dice, man. It's all or nothing. Are you in? You do. If you don't play, you're a nobody. If you play, there's a chance you could be president of Venezuela. Small chance, but there's a chance. Do you play?
Christopher Clipper in the chat asks, Mike V, does it depend on how strong Putin wants this? The thing is, they don't want happening to Venezuela what happened in Libya. So what happened in Libya on a political scale is that, or at least on a business scale, was that there were multinational contracts that were signed between Libya and China and Libya and Russia. And in 2009, a lot of those contract agreements were put before the Security Council for a resolution. But by 2011, the United States had already came in there and tore up the contracts just as the bombing started. So it cut. Libya was the largest country in Africa to produce barrels of oil, which they were producing 3.1 million barrels of oil per day. China had a contract to have those barrels of oil shipped to China directly, which was which is a real good pipeline for them. That was a huge source of energy that China needed, because that was the fallback in case Venezuela, in case Iran was to fall. So when those contracts were tore up, all the business went kaput, and they got nothing out of it. And the $10.5 billion arms deal that was signed in 2009, supposed to be delivered in 2011 to Libya, was also put on freeze as well. So they are trying to prevent anything happening again. Keep in mind that when this happened, Putin was not in charge. It was Dmitry Medvedev who was in charge of Russia at the time, and that's the bombing in Libya is what brought Putin back to power, so that this would never happen again. So this is what they're looking
at. Yeah. If you can't protect them, they're not going to do business with you.
Yeah, if Libya didn't get bombed, for that matter, if they would have got their military, surplus from Russia at the time, I think this whole entire Middle East thing would be a completely different strategy.
It'd be a different story.
Yeah, and then again, France may EU may not be here if they didn't.
Well, I think the EU may still not be here.
Oh, what I'm saying is it still may. It probably won't. It doesn't look like it's going to survive. But I'm saying it wouldn't be here now. I don't believe it would be here now if it hadn't. Because when you know the story. I don't have to repeat the story. You guys know the story. You can actually go through the sequence of events and how it happened. In fact, Obama had to override his military to actually make it happen.
Sure did.
Well, it's Hillary's war more than Obama's war.
Yeah, well, amongst other people. They're in service of other folks, but which they've never forgiven Hillary for to this day.
Yeah, I mean, they lost a whole lot of black people inside Libya. The Tuaregs were actually black people. Gaddafi was the only Arab leader in the Arab world to actually apologize for slavery and give reparations back to those people, which is how the Tuaregs got the land and created their own city. But Hillary Clinton's backers, terrorists on the ground, actually went there and as a death squad and cleared out their own entire city.
I remember that.
Tuaregs. So a lot of black people don't understand the significance of geopolitics and why we discuss a lot of this stuff, because this might affect you later on in life. Maybe not right now as you walk out the door, but when you start to travel and you start to see people who look like you are suffering because of some of these these rednecks and these supremacists and their ideals.
Yeah, I would say even though black people have their differences across the world, we affect one each other. Whether how the world see us is based on how they see other black people. People from Nigeria, if they see Nigerians as such and such, they're gonna see Black Americans such and such, because they don't. Only thing that's different from us is our accent. and how we talk, but they're going to look at us the same. So if Americans were the cream of the crop doing our thing and own certain financial, not financial, but business sectors in America, then other people around the world will look at Africans like, wow, they can do it. These people can do it. And I guarantee you the people will live off of, I guarantee you other black people will live off other black people's achievements just because of that. Because of that, it all touches each other.
Hey, I just want to answer this one statement in the chat. Roger's motive. He says Georgia is in Russia's backyard. That's true, but they also have something significantly different. The United States has biological warfare facilities inside Georgia where they're basically either kidnapping Russians or they're just sampling their DNA for biological warfare purposes. This is a big problem for Russia, and they see this as a big red line for them, even more so than Syria, that they're willing to bomb that facility if need be. So that's been on the table for the last year and a half. And there's actually a journalist on YouTube who actually broke that news. She's a Bulgarian. She's on YouTube. I forget her name right now, but she tried to break into the facility with her iPhone and record all this information. And she was the one that actually broke the news that this was happening. So if she's capturing this information, it's sure as hell that the Russian intelligence has this information already. So they're looking at all of these weapons of mass destruction through biological warfare means as a big red line. There's 24 of them in Africa right now, all up and down the western side of Africa, which is how you wonder how Ebola was leaked out. You know, that's where it came from.
Yeah. The thing is they're not the only ones with CRISPRs.
All right, this next one is from arvalnews.com. Trial of U.S. staffer charged with spying continues in Turkey. The trial of a U.S. consulate staffer accused of spying and attempting to overthrow Turkey's government continued on Wednesday in Istanbul with testimony of a secret witness, pro-government Sabah newspaper reported. Metin Topaz, a Turkish citizen and Istanbul-based liaison with the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency, DEA, was seen shedding tears on his first day in court on Tuesday. According to Social's newspaper, Topaz was arrested in 2017 and has been accused of ties to the U.S.-based Turkish preacher Fethullah Gulen, who Ankara says organized a failed coup in 2016. Topaz was more like the owner of the place than the interpreter. This is my personal evaluation, Sabah quoted the witness as saying in reference to Topaz's access to the consulate's financial department. 59-year-old Topaz, a Drug Enforcement Agency DEA interpreter, has denied the charges against him, while the U.S. Embassy has called the accusations wholly without merit. U.S. officials say freeing unjustly detained Turkish nationals on their staff is a priority, as is the case of NASA scientist Serkan Kolic, a dual U.S. Turkish national jailed on terror charges. This is interesting that the DEA is even over there in the first place. There's more that meets the eye when it comes to U.S. state agencies operating abroad. Why would the DEA need to be inside Turkey? Handling operations outside the consulate in regards to all of this.
I want to say that. I was going to say, I think there's, you got the illicit drug trade. There's a lot of stuff that does come out of Turkey.
Turkey's been transshipment for heroin for centuries.
You guys can tear this apart. Go ahead.
Oh no, I agree with you, Jess. I was gonna say I think that largely has to do with the heroin trade. Also too, the hookah tobacco, like a lot of that stuff does come from there too. So there's concerns that there's other things packed along with that stuff when it gets shipped over. So that's why they have that there, because there are what I don't know what they call them, like sin or sin based consumables, if you call it, that do come from there, that come into this country.
It's interesting because this Turkish, let me stop sharing this. This Turkish coup had a lot of people involved, and
They sure did.
you tie this guy into all of this, you know. It just makes you wonder about how deep is the United States embedded into this agenda while trying to deny that anything is even happening. Because if this guy wasn't, if he wasn't valuable, the United States wouldn't go to bat for him. Just like this other guy in Russia that they found, you know, with the USB thumb drive, trying to take Russian data, right? And they arrested him outside the hotel. You know, they said he was just some kind of logistics contractor in Russia, working for like Ford or GM or something like that. When it comes to find out that he was actually working outside the embassy and, you know, the U.S. consulate in Russia, and then they come by, you know, into the Russian prison to actually try to spring him out of jail. But why are you trying to spring him out of jail if he was just a regular, you know, 9-to-5 blue collar guy operating in Russia? What's the deal?
No, yeah, well, yeah, you know, he's a spy.
And then, you know, you remember also, man, when how do you say that dude's last name?
Erdogan.
Yeah, when him and his security apparatus put hands on some Turkish American protesters. You know, there's kind of been this back and forth kind of agitation on some levels, and so now, you know, Turkey's grabbing you know, U.S. based assets. You know, and so I think that this might signal. I think there might be some layers to this, because remember, also we're also talking about the trade embargo with regards to tech products. You know, with Turkey and all that as well. So I think there's a couple of layers going on here.
I think one of U.S. favorite partners is behind all of this, and it went through the EU. The U.S. was involved in it, but not in the planning stages.
Yeah.
But they were trying to get rid of Erdogan.
Oh yeah. That was obvious.
The plan didn't come out. The plan came out the same plan that they had for Libya, not Libya, but Syria right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Similar to what they were planning in Turkey.
Right, because he made a pledge with or made a peace with Russia after they shot down the Russian jet in 2015. So the coup took place in 2016. So they had every intention on you're not going to make any friends with Russia for that matter, because the SOC was paying restitution back to Russia for that shot down airplane, and they also want to sabotage the South Stream pipeline coming from Russia into Turkey, which is a big factor for Turkey, because Turkey is going to supply energy to Europe through that, Southern Europe through Bulgaria. This is a big problem for the United States or even the Gulf countries, because most of your Gulf countries like Qatar rely on gas exports, and they wanted to push that gas right through Syria, and Syria said no, or Assad said no. So that's where a lot of that conflict comes from. But then you factor in Iran as well. Iran wasn't going to tolerate a gas pipeline being pushed through Syria and up through Turkey. That was out of the question for them. So there's a lot of people involved in making sure that Syria stays afloat and that Erdogan goes down and that Russia gets out of Syria. Syria is a really messy situation. It was the jump off point for a lot of these problems.
Yeah, well, Syria's right in the middle.
Yeah,
basically connects all the. You know, it's been the historical divide between Asia and Africa and also Europe. So it's just right smack dab in the middle. So if you mess with it, guess what's going to happen? You know, you have all this chaos, which the ensuing chaos with refugees and all this kind of stuff going into Europe. So.
Yeah, Turkey has quite a bit of those refugees as well on their border. I think there's about maybe 2 million of them.
I hear they're trying to get them to go back and start rebuilding the cities and stuff like that.
Yeah, they started sending them back to Aleppo and these other places
Mhm.
because there's no real reason to keep them there.
Yeah.
It's all safe now. The war is over at this point. It's all over. It's only one pocket of terrorists left, and those guys are
They're near closer to Iraq, aren't they?
no, they're still in Idlib. So they're still hiding out in Idlib in the basements and stuff like that. They've dug tunnels throughout the streets and stuff like that underneath the ground, so to move their vehicles and move their equipment
Okay.
to avoid getting bombed. But Russia has decoded all of their signals, their cell phone signals, and their text messages, and intercepted those. So it's just a matter of a few months. It'll probably be over by September. They'll starve these guys out. There's no food coming to them unless they start eating the cats and dogs like they were before.
Oh, good grief. Okay.
Yeah, there's videos of that on YouTube. Them, starving to the point because they couldn't get any. United States couldn't drop off any food to them. The Syrian government had denied any sort of visas back to the consulates because what they were using was the flight path for those to get back into Damascus, back into these consulates, and they would drop food off, for mid-flight. So now that they've denied them that access, it's all said and done for them.
Yeah, a lot of money for nothing.
I want to just read a comment Christopher Clipper said in the chat, just to give some of our listeners who may not really be too familiar with what we're talking about. Just for reference, Turkey is the gateway to the Black Sea and the Russian oil fields of Baku. So just to kind of give you sort of like a geopolitical kind of.
And it also helps just looking at the map when we talk. That clears up a lot of cobwebs. A lot of cobwebs. Yeah, you know what? Let me I got a lot. Let me
Are you going over there to see Dollar Will, or are you staying?
No, I just said what's up. Let me look up Turkey map so let people know. Let me do the maps. Here we go.
Because they while you opening the maps, well, they reopened their embassies. Qatar, not Qatar. Iraq has not Iraq. Saudi Arabia and the rest of these Gulf GCC members have actually reopened their embassies inside Syria. So that means the war is over. Pretty much it's all said and done. But the United States has put sanctions on any private companies wanting to do business inside Syria to help rebuild the infrastructure.
No,
that's a very dirty move.
Of course.
Of course.
This can slow things down. You can't stop them, but they want to slow them down.
Okay, so whoever looking at the map, this is do I need to turn my dark mode off, or is it fine?
No, that's fine. That's fine, man.
Okay, so this is Turkey, and then we talk about you got UAE and this little. No, I gotta zoom in because a lot of the countries are not showing up. This is Qatar, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran, Syria, right there, Turkey. Now, you got the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea. So for a lot of these areas, which are the main players that we're talking about, the easiest way to get into Europe is through Turkey. So if not that way, then you got to take a long route through the stands, such as Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, then through Russia and Ukraine to get into the eastern part of Europe. That's a long route.
It's a long way around. Yeah.
Right. So it's easy to go through Turkey. So Turkey is a connection piece. If you don't want to go through the Mediterranean Sea from Eastern Europe, the Asias, and Africa, they hold a grand geopolitical chess piece. So that's when we talk about these places in Turkey. This is what we're talking about, right there.
Yeah, which is why that failed coup was actually a big blow.
Right, because if America got control of Turkey in terms of putting a puppet leader in place, then they controlled all of this.
Yeah,
they can tax whoever, tax whatever, and it's going right into the main European states such as Bulgaria, Romania, Italy, all of that.
Turkey. plays a very strategic role in all of this, and they have a very strong military. So I would not want to try these guys.
No, the Turks, no.
Mm-mm.
Turks are legendary.
All right, let me get to the next article. All right, this one is from Reuters.com. Iran to cement ties with Lebanon, Hezbollah, despite U.S. pressure.
Good God.
Iran said on Sunday it would expand its ties with Lebanon in spite of the provocation and interventionist call by U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo for Beirut to choose sides, Iran state television reported. On a regional tour to drum up support for Washington's harder line against Tehran, Pompeo said on Friday that Lebanon faced a choice: bravely move forward as an independent and proud nation, or allow the dark ambitions of Iran and Hezbollah to dictate your future. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Bahrain Qasimi dismissed Pompeo's remarks. Because of the failure of its policies in the Middle East, America has turned to the outdated and disgraced weapon of threats and intimidation to impose its imperious policies on other countries, Qasimi said, state television reported. While respecting the independence of Lebanon and the free will of government and nations, Iran will use all its capacities to strengthen unity inside Lebanon and also to expand its ties with Lebanon. Hezbollah, whose influence has expanded at home and in the region, control three of 30 ministries in the government led by Western-backed Prime Minister Saeed al-Hariri, the largest member in its history. The dominant Shiite Muslim power, Iran, and Hezbollah, founded in 1982 by Iran's Revolutionary Guards, are major players in the war in Syria and the fight against militant groups opposed to the President Bashar al-Assad, which include Islamic State. Qasimi said that Lebanon's Hezbollah was a legal and popular party. How can Pompeo make such an impudent and irrational remarks while visiting Lebanon? You know, this guy, Pompeo, all of these guys say some of the most funniest things. They make it seem as if, you know, people are suffering, and, you know, if you don't get these guys out of your country, your country would just suffer more into chaos. If you don't get rid of Maduro, you know, you're just gonna starve to death. We're gonna take all your gold from Venezuelan vaults inside London, and we're gonna give them to this guy Maduro, this millennial. We're gonna give him $10 billion worth of gold, and your country will be doing much better if you follow this millennial guy who really doesn't know what he's doing, who just sits around on Twitter all day, you know, tweeting his foreign policy and domestic policy. Like, people are not stupid anymore. This is
I was gonna say, wouldn't you think? Don't you think that that's largely just largely for optics, and that there's not any like real basis behind that for people? There's no meat to really chew on when the United States makes those type of statements. You know, you know, when they make those statements in response to countries like basically taking a bold stance, right, or making a proclamation as to what their objectives are going to be moving forward, and then the United States comes with this whole sort of, this guy is bad, this guy is good for you, right? But I think it's kind of like more of like an optics type of thing. Like you said, I'm not sure if people actually believe that.
And also, it's more of a scare tactic when you have, when you have people that really don't know what's going on specifically, and they get a lot of their information from fly by mouth or word of mouth from this. It's like piecemeal information, and all of a sudden you have these powers that you perceive that know what they're talking about and telling you such and such, this and this, and scaring you. They're more to make an emotional decision on, well, maybe they're right because I don't know really what's going on, and they know more than me. Maybe they're right, but nowadays,
Right.
with so much information proliferating through the internet and people sharing, not people sharing particular information that's true, come from reputable sources, then those scare tactics that's worked in the past don't work too much now. It only works on those people that really don't have that access to that type of information. But even then, there's enough people that have access to that information to spread the word. Say, well, they're lying because of this, and they can give real detail, not really detailed, but real concrete information on why you should not do this and why you should not do that and why you should stay strong with your country or this and that.
One of the things that I this is foreign policy playbook, and this has been the playbook for I don't know a few years. The U.S. does things like that no matter what. I don't know if you guys remember the first war in Iraq, even the second one. They had to bring out the generals to give the briefings because most of the congressmen in the United States, most of the people in the United States, and even our great president didn't know where Iraq was. So when you're talking, when you're using information like this, it's first for the domestic consumption, because even though we have a lot of cell phones and you can always reach down and pull up this information, a lot of Americans don't do that. You know, the knowledge of geography and history is gone from America, and you got a nation of people who've been entrenched in, well, the government says that this guy is a bad guy, so he has to be bad. And what the newspaper says, look, the Washington Post says it, the Wall Street Journal says it, and this is, like I said, foreign policy. It takes some Russian guy in the United States, as a matter of fact, he said, look, it takes 20 years to make people relearn something and change. So this is the problem. The people here in America can't relearn this at short notice. So they have to continue that foreign policy playbook.
And to give credence to what DE is saying, to prove it on a little bit. Is that me or someone else? Okay.
That's Scholar Chang trying to get in.
Okay. When you ask people what they think about Kim Jong-un, and then they'll say who, then you will say North Korea, and then they'll go on a spiel of what they heard or somebody told them, and then ask them simply, pull out a map, unlabeled map, and ask them where is North Korea. See, they can't connect. A lot of people can't connect dots in terms of the simple things that they need to know in order to make a formative opinion or educated opinion about certain things, certain geopolitical topics they hear in the news. It's only what they hear, these bias information, then they make their opinions on that. It's hard to decipher, and the more you listen to it, it's harder for a person to decipher unbiased from biased or real news from quote unquote fake news.
Scholar Chang, you wanted to get in there?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me well?
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, Mike. So earlier you mentioned about those that America, the way that we view Venezuela is because we try to the Americans try to sabotage the socialist policy of Venezuela. But to be honest with you, though, let's be honest here, right? A lot of these socialist countries with their leaders, well, they're not pure socialists, obviously, but a lot of these, let's just for all intents and purposes, a lot of these socialist country, their leaders lead double lives. Like, for example, I don't know if you guys, I'm pretty sure you guys read this before. There was pictures, images of Fidel Castro's son, right, living all this luxurious life, traveling throughout Europe, and he actually posts all this picture on the Instagram because if I'm mistaken, Fidel Castro's son is a millennial, right? I'm mistaken, yeah. They have a picture of him living all this luxurious life, while the country itself, is currently has always been experiencing the poverty and so forth. So I think in the case of Fidel, in the case of Hugo Chavez, the only reason that policy was sustainable because, like I say, the whole oil really that's the only reason the economy was booming at the time. We were able to support the socialist programs because the oil. So yeah, while I agree that America, a lot of the country when it comes to interfere with, especially Western country when it comes to interfere with Venezuela's policies because for selfish reasons, for it's national purely national interest. But at the same time, we cannot forget the fact that a lot of the socialist leaders, they're not really, so-called quote unquote pro pro masses. A lot of time they, like I said, a lot of time they have their own secret decadent lives that they hidden away from the view, not going to be disclosed until years later. So who knows? Like I said, maybe years down the line we will be able to see the images of Hugo Chavez living decadent lives. Who knows? But like I say, I just know that, like I say, in the case of Fidel Castro, that news was pretty recent. And of course, the same thing can be said back in China a long time ago. How a lot of people think that back in 1970 that China have this a very ambitious socialist program and trying to rejuvenate the country, and little didn't realize that Chairman Mao was living a very, very, very luxurious life. In fact, his wife was bathing in the milk, right? In the country when there's starvation of having 50 million people die as a result of starvation, but his wife was bathing in the milk, right? So that's why I'm just saying a lot of time I cannot really sympathize with a lot of these socialist countries, even though they're on the surface, yeah, it seems like they are pro working class people, they are supporting the working class people, but who knows? Like I say, that's what I want to add.
No, that's a very interesting point that you bring up there, Scholar Chang. And I mean, I think the proof in the pudding is largely going to be tied to what their national agendas are. As socialist leaders, I mean, are they, like you said, are they more concerned with maybe sort of like managing the masses while they kind of live on the hog, or are they going the Hugo Chavez Maduro route where we're literally talking about nationalizing? Nationalizing the country's largest, most abundant, and most valuable resource, and doing so in such a way where it's going to enrich all of the non-elite people.
Yep, that's what I'm saying. Non-elite. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. That's the key word right there. Is I don't want any elites. I don't care if it's socialist elite or corporate elites or any ideological elites. The point is that anytime when you have these authoritarians that interfere with the affairs of interfere and dictates the direction of the country, you're always going to have a problem, because we know human nature, we are fundamentally corrupt. So I know that when it comes to these type of affairs, that's why the whole social communism fails, because the fact that it failed to take into account of the fact that human beings, we're not ideal. We're not just have this perfect moral character that we're not purely altruistic. So yeah, and one more thing I want to add also, another example, North Korea right now. I'm pretty sure you guys know that the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un apparently has access to the high-speed internet in a country that has no electricity 90% of the time. So,
well, what do you think he was going to use? 56K? Net zero?
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying, point out the hypocrisy of it. It just.
Well, I mean, what should he be doing? In your opinion, should he like go to a library and sit down with the rest of the people and use their internet or something?
Well, I'm have some high speed internet.
Well, you can't provide it to everybody because you haven't had a fiber rollout. That's the difference. I mean, the embassies and the presidential palace is going to have infrastructure in place. I mean, that's a given, right? You're going to have some form of infrastructure in place, so of course they're going to have high speed internet. But I think it's
get at least can they at least get 56K?
Well, they have Wi-Fi. They have Wi-Fi now, so it's not like they're sitting down with an SSH in a cave in some kind of mud hut or something like that. That's not really how people in North Korea are really sitting down. Let me mute you, Scholar Chang, because you're making a lot of noise. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you were being carjacked or something. Anyways, let me go to the last article. All right, this last one is from Haaretz.com. EU states unanimously announce we do not recognize Israeli sovereignty over Golan Heights.
Ooh.
European Union Foreign Policy Chief releases statement on behalf of 28 union states, despite Netanyahu's past claims that his actions were going to break EU humanity in matters concerning Israel. Sorry. The European Union Foreign Policy Chief, Federica Mogherini, released a statement Wednesday on behalf of all 28 union states saying that EU does not recognize Israeli sovereignty over the Golan. DE, what's your take on this?
Well, this is going to be a big problem because it leaves the U.S. as being the only country who has decided to side with Israel with this view. And the problem is that it involves Lebanon. It involves Lebanon because Israel has seen that they are not capable of, they will not be capable of defending what they have done for the past, I don't know, 50 years, more than 50 years. And especially after taking the Golan, they can't defend it. They're trying their best not to give it up because of what's on and around the Golan. Israel wants it, and in order to try to reap the wealth that's there, that's one of the reasons why they push the war in Syria. Beside the pipeline, that's one of the reasons why Israel pushed the war in Syria. But they can't. Lebanon is going to be a thorn in their side, and that's why they're trying to get Pompeo to get rid of Lebanon. But Lebanon is not going to go anywhere. So Israel has to try to get the Golan by other means. And when the EU came out and says, "Yep, we don't recognize it," it leaves America standing alone.
Yeah, America can't push its way anymore. It shows that Europe is going their own way. We saw that with Italy siding with the Belt and Road Initiative. Turkey going their own way. Turkey doesn't recognize it either. Erdogan is up in arms about the Golan Heights. And I find it interesting that Erdogan is up in arms about the Golan Heights, but he occupies half of Greece. Some of these Greek islands, Turkey is actually occupying them and won't give them back to the Greeks, which is why Greece has spent so much of their NATO budget because they're worried about Turkey invading their territory. So I always find that to be interesting. But in this regard, I don't think that this Golan Heights situation is gonna play out too well for the United States, because now if you can justify taking territory by military force, then you can't talk about the Crimea, and you also can't talk about China and the South in these Spratly Islands. You can't talk about that. You can't talk about Taiwan now. You null and void yourself from any future discussions of diplomacy and international law.
I don't know if you guys saw it. The U.S. threatened everybody at the ICC that if they investigate anything with the U.S., you lost your visa. Did you guys see that?
Yes.
So they're using every means necessary to hold on to the like I said, the foreign policy that we will do it as we want to do it, whether you guys like it or not. That's the way it is.
Yeah. They got the biggest guns. So if they had pea shooters, they weren't able to stand as tall and stand as strong. They got the biggest guns. Therefore, that's why Israel is cozying up to the biggest bully on the block. and it's walking around with the bullies. They're walking around behind the biggest bully on the block, and dare somebody touch them because they're giving what the bully wants. They're how am I trying to say this? They are good with the bully. They got in good. They ingratiated themselves. So if they get hit, it's almost like the bully getting hit because he's receiving something from the little pipsqueak. So if America falls, Israel is gonna go with somebody else.
Oh, they don't have anybody else to go to since they've isolated themselves from the rest of society.
Well, if U.S. fall,
They have Britain left, but even Britain is not too much of a fan of
right.
Israel. So
Britain's
at
got
least
its
not
own
right now.
problems to worry about too.
Yeah, yeah. And Israel has pigeonholed themselves into an area that they can't get themselves out of. They can never go back to Europe because the climate in Europe with the far right doesn't have the stomach to deal with Israelis and their issues. And then you factor in they couldn't go to Africa because for obvious reasons. It just won't work well for them. So Israel has put themselves in a bit of a pickle, especially by this whole Golan Heights thing, because they tried to work out a deal with Syria before, and they wanted Syria to recognize them as a Jewish state, and then they would leave all the territory. They were let Syria reclaim all their territory, but Syria said no. So that shows you the position that Syria has taken on all of this, as well as Lebanon. Lebanon has no interest in recognizing Israel as a Jewish state, and then they'll leave them alone. That's not going to happen. They're not foolish. They're not going to let that go down. So,
but you remember the war where Israel just destroyed all of Lebanon? Do you guys remember that?
yes.
At that time, Lebanon was one of the places who one of the countries who, even though they were, had Palestinians living in Lebanon, they didn't object to what a lot of things that Israel was doing. And then Israel turned on Lebanon and destroyed, they destroyed the economic viability of Lebanon. It was only after Hamas came in that Lebanon began to have some semblance of stability and really peaceful life. Because every time Israel feel like doing it, they'll send the missiles over, the aircraft over, bomb Lebanon, to keep the war.
I think they've always existed after that clash. They've always existed in a kind of semi sort of agitated state because, like you said, randomly, Israel's going to just shoot a missile over into Lebanon because they feel as though there was some bomb that came flying from that side, even it's unsubstantiated.
You mean Gaza?
I'm sorry, Gaza. Yeah.
No, they used to do it to Lebanon.
No, they did it to Lebanon too, though. Yeah.
Yeah, but not because they perceived that there was a missile coming from there. That was during the times of the PLO, right? So they got rid of the PLO. PLO is no longer in Lebanon. So it's more of Gaza, if anything. They wouldn't shoot it back into. They wouldn't shoot anything into Lebanon now because Lebanon can shoot back.
Oh yeah.
Hey, Xanatol's Clutch, what's going on, man? If you want to get on the panel and shed some light on some of the topics that we're discussing, you're more than welcome to come on. The idea of because now even Lebanon is involved in this because this Golan Heights actually shares multiple borders: Jordan, Syria, Israel as an occupied state, and then you have Lebanon, and then you have Palestine.
That's a kettle pot right there, man. Jeez.
A powder keg, yes.
Kettle pot, powder keg, yeah.
It's a different type of pot. A different type of pot you were thinking. The area that they have is the most fertile ground for any sort of social development, oil, agriculture, people development, because they already have largely. Golan Heights is largely a city that has been fully developed by Israel at this point, but that's only because they've taken it militarily. The other side of the coin is that where Syria is, where the Golan Height is in Syria, is not developed at all. It's in fact it's been vacated. So now you have Lebanon getting involved, saying, Hezbollah saying, there will be consequences for trying to take the Golan Heights in this fashion. Okay, Complex, you got him. Yeah, and we talked about this last week, but I just want to kind of reiterate it because there's a lot of people watching this now, that there's a lot that you can learn, that black people can learn from Hezbollah and their way they operate, the way they move, the way they establish themselves. Hezbollah has up to 70 seats in parliament out of the 128 in Lebanese parliament. And they also have their own paramilitary wing that's 65,000 strong, and they take very few casualties. So they've been able to knock down the Israeli Defense Force, which was 90,000 strong in 2006, and push them all the way back into Israel with only 10,000 guys. That's never been done before. They took out one of their warships, which is a Corvette, and they also they also have range capabilities to hit everything inside Israel with their own homemade rockets and missiles. So keep that in mind. And they also knocked out, one quarter of their tank, or 1/3 of their tanks. So those advanced tanks that Israel had going up these mountainsides, Hezbollah popped up out of the ground, out of these gopher holes, and basically knocked out the first tank and knocked out the last tank inside their convoy and trapped the other tanks in the middle and completely annihilated them. I think some of them even fell over the side of a mountain because of they didn't have any turning capabilities. But this is sort of what people can do on the ground when they're organized, when they're politically organized, when they're military organized, and when they're economically organized. 2% of people's annual income goes to the efforts of Hezbollah. Hezbollah doesn't just operate inside Lebanon. They operate inside Iraq. They operate inside Africa. They're inside Latin America. They help rebuild all the infrastructure inside Lebanon after Israel had bombed it. All your electrical engineering infrastructure that needs to be put together, all your transformers and lines on the street, water, irrigation facilities, as well as even clinics. They have a wide array of clinics that they control now, and they also do a lot of child rearing. So a lot of guys who were lost in the war or inside jail, they actually help raise those kids. So there's a whole litany of things, including senior citizenship, senior citizens treatment, rehabilitation centers for senior citizens, senior rehabs. So they do a whole array of things that I think a lot of black people don't really understand, even in America. I mean, the closest thing that we had to something like Hezbollah was like the Black Panther Party, but they move in a way that is something to be admired for the most part.
Organization.
Christopher Clipper asks, does Israel need water from the Golan? Yeah, that's where they get a lot of their fresh water from. I think 1/3 of their fresh water comes from the Golan. If they can't control this water, because water is a big thing for them. If they can't control the water, then what happens here is that Israel becomes very vulnerable because they can they can die from thirst. Which is why they want to take the southern portion of Lebanon for their water resources as well. So
right. I think I sent Xanatos the link. Hopefully you got it. Are we in the
this is open mic.
Open mic? Oh, okay. See if there's anything else in the chat here. And as Paul said, this goes back to 1947, and David Ben Gurion, no Arab nation leader can accept Israel and expect to live.
Well, you saw what happened to Sadat, Anwar Sadat in Egypt.
Sadat. Yep. Assassinated.
But Mike, here's the thing though. Let's be honest here though. At the same time, while we can have all this criticism of Israel, but it's only functional relative democracy at this moment in the entire Middle East, right? So if you're just judging from like a very objective point of view, Israel is as Western as democratic as you can get in the Middle East right now. And even the look at the treatments of minority in throughout the Middle Eastern country. I don't care if it's Shiite Muslims or the Christians or any other indigenous group, right? All these Middle Eastern countries. I don't care if it's Lebanon. I don't care if it's the Gulf states. I don't care if it's Jordan. All these countries that we might think that we might think it may not be the agitated, but a lot of times their political system itself is at best authoritarian, at worst monarchical. So I don't know. I'm kind of very ambivalent about this. So that's because, if you believe in the political system of liberal democracy, when I use the word liberal, I don't mean the leftist sense, but the classical sense, the liberal democracy, then I can see why a lot of people are supporting Israel, because that's pretty much the only democratic country right now in the entire Middle East. Well, if I'm not mistaken, not just in the entire Middle East, that entire what do they call that?
Region?
Asian Minor, is that what they call it? Yeah, back in the days, back in the biblical time, they call it Asian Minor. Yeah, that includes, that goes beyond the Middle East. I think it also includes part of the North Africa, right? If I'm mistaken.
Yep.
But anyway, the point is that, that's pretty much the only democratic institution that we have right now. Even Turkey, especially Turkey, used to be Turkey and Israel, but now with that whole coup, with that Godel's coup, pretty much Israel is the only country that's left right now and that is considered democratic. And go ahead. I'm sorry. What is
Scholar? How do you determine that Israel is a democracy?
Well, because number one, they have a constitution. They literally have a written constitution. Turkey is supposed to have a constitution, right? But look at the way they completely discarded. Godel dismantled the parliament. Well, I don't think they call it parliament. What do they call it? The parliament, the assembly, wherever. He can just single-handedly dismiss the entire legislature branch. So that's how I see it, is that they actually follow the written words of the Constitution. So that's why I consider it quote unquote democracy. Now, of course, there's no such thing as actual democracy,
Well, I think what DE is hitting at is that Palestinians make up a large portion of the voting bloc, and they don't have rights to vote. So it's not a true democracy in the way that you're presenting it, right? So if Palestinians could vote, there would be no Jewish people in charge, and they know this. So they have to create an apartheid state in order to prevent them from actually having a true democracy in the first place.
That's what I'm saying though, because on the Palestinian side, they have their own authority, right? They have their own authority. But on the Israel side, the Palestinians who chose to stay in Israel side, they have the right to vote.
But they could never lead. They could never lead Israel. They could never ever lead Israel. It's in the
of course. But ethnically, of course. Like I say, it's one.
But your thesis is still flawed. Your thesis is still flawed. And when you go back and try to explain it, because like Mike says, the Palestinians have no right to select who runs Israel in the first place. Then you're saying about equal rights, because there are The Israel is run by people who they call themselves Ashkenazi. The Sephardim are more in numbers than the Ashkenazi.
Mm-hmm.
The people who came from Ethiopia and the eastern side of North Africa, who believed that they were going back to home to their Jewish state, have no rights in Israel.
What?
Israel sterilizes the women. Do you understand these things? Israel treats them on the same basis that they treat the Palestinians. And these people are supposed to be Jews, but you know what? They are black skinned.
That's what I'm saying. Well, in that case, that's more of a racial then, because I mean, not just Israel. That's the entire Middle East. I mean, name me one. Okay, name me one Middle Eastern country that has not treated darker skinned people nicely.
But you're saying that Israel is the only democratic nation, and if it's supposed to be democratic, people have rights.
To kind of, I think maybe I understand where Scholar Ching is coming from in terms of amongst the Israeli set, right? Because there's a clear distinction, right? It is an apartheid state, and there's a clear distinction between the Israeli interest and the Palestinian interest. Amongst the Israelis, their process is more democratic in terms of how they go about choosing their policies and electing their officials. It's more of a democratic process amongst the Israelis. But I also see what you guys are saying in terms of like, okay, Israel as a whole ain't democratic because it's actually an apartheid state. I mean, it kind of, am I kind of following where you're going?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Fair question. My point is that then if we're gonna get race, we're gonna drag race and ethnic culture, all that stuff into conversation. Yeah, of course. Then then Israel itself is not gonna be. It's not. But my point is that in terms of treatment of even in terms of treatment minority, racial minority. Well, in the case of Israel, that's more of a kind of gray because the Palestinian population is pretty large. So, in terms of the treatment of different religious group, different ethnic group, Israel as best can get. Unfortunately, like I mean, look at Gulf states. If you even practice religious freedom, you're gonna get executed. So, I mean. My point is that what's best you can get right now? I mean, what other Middle Eastern country can you name right now that actually,
let me touch a couple comments in here because Paul Bryant says that the Knesset in Israel operates more like a republic, and Jimmy Miller says it's a theocracy. I mean, I kind of see all of these things being accurate.
Right, because it works off of Zionism. That's what.
Right. Yeah. I think it's kind of like a toxic mix of a lot of these different things. But at the core, we have an apartheid state.
Exactly. Israel does not have a part of the U.S. democracy. Every man's vote counts. One man, one vote. Israel is not like that. One vote, your vote as a Palestinian or is not equal to my vote as an Ashkenazi. I cannot select, say I want to select a Sephardim president. It won't happen. Even if he got more votes than the other guy. That's not democratic.
Is that making sense to you, Scholar Chang? You have any response to that?
No, I mean, I always see where everybody come from. But my point is that I say, I'm always go by, based on less of two evil, because there's no such thing as, and it only exists in an ideal world that we have a perfect, racial, harmonious racial, the harmonious multi-ethnic state that just does not exist. So I'm just saying that among all Middle Eastern countries, that's the best you can get right now at this point.
And that's saying a lot.
Yeah. So I mean, of course, Israel has a lot of problems. In fact, one thing I hate about I hate to admit, Israel supported South Africa. Remember back in the when South Africa has the apartheid state, the actual apartheid. Yeah, Israel support. So of course, if anything, I not just only disagree, but despise Israel for doing that. But I'm just saying, for now, in the Middle East country, if you want to live if you have to live in one of the Middle Eastern country, I would choose Israel, of course. There's no doubt.
You would choose Israel, but they don't allow black people to live amongst the other fair-skinned, pale-skinned Jewish people. They actually put black people inside ghettos, no different than they do in the United States. In fact, a lot of their structuring of society is based on the United States itself. They got a lot of they got a lot of their ideas from the United States.
I completely agree. That's what I'm saying. But I agree with you. 100%. I'm like, because that's what I'm saying. That's part of the reason that Israel was supporting the South Africa at the time. But my point is, but even among other, like I say, amongst all Middle Eastern countries, like I say, they didn't treat darker skinned people any nicer. I mean, you still got slavery going on right now at this very moment. In the Gulf states.
You're speaking purely lesser of two evils.
Yeah, purely. Like, exactly. That's what I'm saying. A purely lesser of two evil. Yeah.
Hey, what's good, Xanatos?
Hey, what's good, guys? Yeah, no.
Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me on here. It's definitely my maiden voyage, and I'm definitely interested in stuff like geopolitics, but I didn't want to cut your conversation off. But as far as living in Israel, I mean, I get why certain people want to live there and why certain people wouldn't. And I mean, to be honest, a lot of what you said about how Israel borrows its ideas from the United States, I have a feeling that a lot of what we see here today with the tribalism and the ethno-nationalism, I feel as if a lot of that's been borrowed from the United States. I mean, to be honest, I think that is our #1 export, if we can say anything about what we've given to the world. Because, to be honest, looking back at history before the establishment of the United States and how they carried this thing of the concept of race into ideas and the psyche of the entire world, the world was trading with everybody. You had freaking merchants going from freaking Africa to Europe, or vice versa, or the Middle East to Asia to India, etc. And however, all of a sudden you got the United States coming in, and it's like, oh, we're all different. It's like it's based on race, and then all of a sudden now we're having more tribalism than ever. Granted, yeah, there were wars, but a lot of the wars were actually fought with closer neighbors than with people at further distances that had different skin. But yeah, I definitely see where you guys are going when it comes to this. You guys there?
Yeah, we can hear you. It's good to have you on, Xanatos, because I didn't know you were into geopolitics. We do this every Wednesday.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely into it. Trust me. Geopolitics, the reason why I'm into it so much is because, I'll be honest, I know there's a narrative that I've seen too much within Black America, or ADO's Black America, in which, can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir. We can all hear.
My voice is a bit hoarse, so forgive me. But there's a bit of a narrative that I see constantly within the Black community, in which a lot of people soak and sour on the current predicament of where they are, where they stand in American society. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm the kind of person who, yeah, you may see me complain for a second, but after that, I'm like, and what? Like, what are we going to do next? What's next on the agenda? I'm not going to sit here, be the freaking scapegoat of everyone in this world, or in this country, I should say, when I can do something about it. And looking at geopolitics, one of the things that has always fascinated me was to see where people like African Americans can strategically relocate if they're not wanted in the country that they came from. There have been plenty of individuals, plenty of immigrants who have come here, for instance, the Jews. You got the Jews, and not so much Israelis, but Jewish people who came from places where they were really terrorized during the 20th century to the United States. And yeah, the worst they've received was something along the lines of what Irish or Italians or Polish people would receive. Yeah, they get like a generation or two of, I would say, immigrant-based discrimination. Something like what we see now with, say, Asians or Latinos, Middle Easterns, but they somehow, some way, see themselves as being a wanted part of the American society. I see geopolitics as a way to figure out how can African Americans, particularly those who are on a higher frequency and, quite frankly, have a triple-digit IQ, can do what other immigrants do or did, and basically go to places where we're wanted, or at the very least where we're allowed to do our business, get ourselves up, really pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and become a wanted part of that society. And to be honest, I think a lot of individuals, particularly your ADOS people who soak, and I think they live off of it, honestly, who really live off being the scapegoat and the bottom wrench of society. A lot of them will tell you the world's the same, the world hates you, and all this other kind of stuff. But when I look outside the United States, it's almost a complete different story in that a lot of people see the BS that America is doing, not just to their own countries or the other countries, but to people within their countries, especially the African American population. And with that, I don't see that I don't see how there isn't a way, or there aren't ways that we could capitalize that. Granted, we would have to bring in some skills, bring in some sort of asset, be an asset to that country, but I can't see how we can't utilize that in the long run in order to have an exchange of sorts, not be these group of individuals who are seeking refugee and they're just begging or whatever. I'm talking about individuals who have something to bring to the table, and as a fair exchange, we are given at the very least a middle buffer status within said society. I mean, and a lot of people say, well, why can't we be number one in our society? Well, we would have to create our own society. But as far as this buffer society, we see how other groups have worked with being the buffer class. We see how the Asians have done, how the Jews have done with being the buffer class, how Italians, Irish, etc., how they did when being a buffer class, how the Latinos and Middle Easterns are doing it right now with being a buffer class society. Trust me. Yeah, you may have some people, some far-right groups who will talk trash about you, but you have even the left and even the mainstream right political sectors that will disown that kind of stuff and will say, hey, look, you're welcome. If you have skills here, you're wanted, etc. So with that, I can't. This is what excites me, honestly. I mean, I know I don't sound as enthusiastic, partially because I'm recovering from a cold, but this is the kind of stuff that I really want to talk about, that I really think will bring about solutions, particularly solutions that I would seek, instead of dealing with a country that has proven time and time again that it doesn't want you, especially if you're not of the stereotype that they perpetuate and that they push, and that they have everyone so diluted to the point of believing that, oh, that's the culture, that's the black culture that we need to emulate, and if you don't, then oh, you're being a bad boy, you're being a sellout. So yeah, I really appreciate stuff like this, even if it's just to learn about the current condition of the countries and how just how it really is outside the bubble known as the United States.
Interesting take. But definitely welcomed. It's definitely welcomed. Do you have any closing thoughts, DE?
I'm not gonna say anything about what Danto said.
Okay.
We in the U.S. or even in the Caribbean, and who've been settled in London or France, you gotta understand the European thinking since 1765 or so, when they came up with the idea that anyway, about 1765, I think it was 1755, 65, and through the U.S. with the installation of this public education system, and the public education system is not to make you as brilliant as you can be. It's basically to breed you to work and to control you, and make you into a person who, if you see somebody who is not acting like you, that they will put you down. That they will. I don't know if you see black people as you think you're white now because you can speak English. You turn against somebody who you see as intelligent and try to pull them back. you know. And John D. Rockefeller put it so thickly, he did like, I don't want a nation of thinkers. I don't want anybody who to be brilliant. I want workers. And that's what the thing is. We don't look into the future to see where the world is going, and we supposed to, because the only way you can be prepared for what's going to happen is if you have an idea of what's going to happen, have a plan for it.
I stepped away for a quick second. Had to check on my daughter. What was the?
We're just giving closing thoughts.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess what we were speaking kind of maybe to like the importance of Black folks taking an interest in geopolitics.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, my position on it is it's not. I don't really. I would say this. It's 2019, and the only thing that's going to happen here is that we're going to just progress further and further into the future. So, having a solid, a solid understanding of how the world works, how the world operates, the various types of people on this planet, languages that they speak, cultures, all of that. I mean, that's very important to consider going into the future because, like we cover on the other hangouts, technology, economics, all of that stuff, it all comes into play with the politics. The politics is, the discussion of the relationships between nations, right? Then there's the technological advances, right, and how that impacts trade amongst these nations. And then there's the economic side of it too. So this is really just kind of like one piece of a broader puzzle that we really should kind of become more versed in, and it really should just be more of a daily pursuit to understand how the world works and how the world operates. So I would say that we're actually at a particular point in time now where we're kind of past the point of shaming each other for knowing things that the other doesn't. That's really sort of like a dubious thing to engage in at this particular point in time, given the magnitude of what we've been discussing for like the last few hours. So just as a whole, I think just a more global, a more serious global mindset needs to be adopted. And that's pretty much my take.
Scholar Chang, you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah. I'm trying to say. Are we talking about in terms of the importance of this geopolitics in the Black community, or just like closing thought period? Mike?
Closing thoughts period.
Oh, okay. Well, one thing I learned, from all these geopolitics topic is that at the end of the day, just like what George Washington once said, there's no permanent friend, there's no permanent enemy, only shifting alliance. Was that about him or somebody else? I forgot. I remember that famous quote. So yeah, the enemy that you seeing today in terms of in the global scales might very well be your enemy tomorrow. So I think that when it comes to geopolitics, we cannot align. We're not going to align based on, like I say, just one particular characteristic, based on, for example, race or religion or whatever. We also have to take all this factor in consideration, because the making of a nation is not just based on one particular factor. It's confluence of all of them. I don't care if the nation is multicultural or homogeneous. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And Paul just joined us.
Okay, cool.
What's up, Paul?
Hey, gents. How are you?
Hey, what's going on, Paul?
Hey.
Paul, you have any thoughts on some of the topics that we discussed and closing thoughts as well?
Well, since it's closing thoughts, I will be really quick. To somewhat echo what Dee said, and complex geopolitics and the study thereof. Everything on this planet is interconnected. Everything relates. Okay, so what happens in one part of the world affects the other part of the world. And when a person takes time to really study what's going on, right, they begin to understand, who the players are, who the real players are, and then you begin to learn to distinguish between what's public consumption and what's really going on behind the scenes that's affecting things globally. Okay, so it is not about human nature is to focus on what's right in front of your face. When you walk out of your door, what's happening to you, what's affecting you. Okay, but if people would take the time to stop and realize that what's happening to them in front of their face has been determined by someone else or somewhere else, and what's happening there, vice versa. So it's about elevating your thinking. So I'll leave that there.
All right. My closing thoughts are make sure you guys hit the like button and share this video, share the stream as much as possible. And we will be back on Friday with economics. And then Saturday, we'll be talking about our space endeavors as well as Raspberry Pis and automation and robotics.
Oh, and then Sunday, we'll be talking about cannabis.
And Sunday also, we'll also have our first baseball hangout. So we'll be talking about Yankees and the Cubs and the Red Sox.
No Dodgers?
Oh, we could throw Dodgers in there as well. I didn't know that they were still a franchise.
No Red Sox. I didn't know the Red Sox were a franchise.
Oh, here's this guy. Here's this guy. All right. Thank you all for joining us and have a good night.